Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's now 6 p.m. on the 14th of July 2022. This is the Planning Committee meeting being held in Committee Room 2 in the Civic Offices. The meeting is being streamed live and will be available straight after this meeting. So with that, we can now go on to apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. I've had an apology from Councillor Howden.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so looking at the minutes found on pages 5 to 14 of the meeting on June 9th, are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? I'll go first. I did receive a email from Claire Beecham in relation to application 22/00210/FUL, that's Highfields Lower Dunton. And in the minutes you'll see that there is a comment that there was no residential complaints, and the comment says officers further advised that they had not received any objections from local residents. We're not sure where that came from because we was aware of that and it was in the report, so we will obviously get that updated after this meeting. Outside that, are there any further comments?
I think we can.
No? Okay, so we're happy, with the exception of that, which will be updated, we're happy to agree the minutes. Agreed? Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Okay. Items of urgent business, there are no items of urgent business. With that, we'll now go on to declarations of interest. So I'm only after declarations of interest on this particular item. Are there any declarations of interest? No? No, okay. And now we're after declarations of receipt of any correspondence. I don't believe I've received anything this month other than the email about the comment on the accuracy of the minutes. Has anyone else received any emails? Councillor Shinnick.
Yeah, I've received an email from Catherine's assistant. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, yep. Okay, right. Then that's in relation to that's in relation to Averley, or sorry, Harrier Primary School. Then.
Sorry, Chair. Could Councillor Watson say that again with her mic on?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I don't think it would have hit the second.
Oh, right, sorry, I also received exactly the same email. Thank you.
Everyone received the email on the Planning Committee, yeah? Excellent,
yes.
Thank you. That's more appropriate. Just 2 seconds. Okay, we're just going to sort out some more chairs for members of the public. Right. Declarations of receipt of any correspondence. I think that was everything. So let's move on to planning appeals. You'll find planning appeals on pages 15 to 20. Have you got any comments for Lee? And Lee, did you have anything you'd like to add? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Reports are noting, but the team are happy to field any questions if you have any.
No, okay, thank you. No further comments, sir. All right then, so we'll then go on to public address to the Planning Committee. As you'll be aware, that now allows us to discuss the 5 items that we have on the agenda this evening. And with that, that takes us to the first item, which is item 8, 22/0077/FUL, Harrier Primary School, found on pages 21 to 36. Lucy, when you're ready, if you could please present why this application has come back to us after it was approved at the last meeting. And just a reminder, as it's a live application from the previous meeting, it still will be the 4 members that were able to vote. That's Councillor Watson, Councillor Piccolo, myself and Councillor Polly, who've been present at all 3 meetings. So Lucy, when you're ready, please present your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application is for construction of a new 2-form entry primary school and nursery with outdoor sports areas, access parking, etc. As members will recall, the application was approved by committee at the June meeting and then referred to the Secretary of State. All matters of principle were agreed. A late letter was hand-delivered to the council offices on the day before the last committee meeting. This was not received into the planning department until after that committee meeting. It is considered correct process that the matters raised, which had not been put to members previously, were brought back to committee as a final decision had not been made, as we are awaiting the Secretary of State decision. The new matters raised are listed and assessed within Part 3 of the update report. But I'll just quickly go through some slides to refresh members on the proposal. So the application site is located to the south of Aveley and north of the A13. The land is located within Greenbelt. So this is an aerial photograph with the site central. Okay, so this block plan shows the proposed new school building in the north-eastern corner of the site. And this slide shows the proposed elevations. Slide. And this is a visual of 3D images of the proposed elevations. And last slide. So all matters of principle have been agreed by committee. The new matters raised do not promote any factors to change the recommendation, which was approval. That's it. Any?
Okay, thank you for that, Lucy. So obviously this is now the third time that this particular application has come back. I know we spent quite a lot of time on it in the first meeting. We probably spent about half hour to 40 minutes at the last. Any questions based on this petition that's been received, or any questions to the planning department? No further questions. Okay, all right then. So that does take us on to. I mean, it is a live application from last time. Obviously, I assume there's no questions based on the amount of questions we've asked previously. So, but we do have 3 statements here this evening. And I'm going to invite a statement of objection from a Kathy Sisterton, a resident in the area. And Kathy, if you'd like to come down to the front, please. And when you're ready, you've got 3 minutes to present your case. Looking at the statement, it is quite heavy. It's quite a lot to get in within 3 minutes, but do your best, and we'll see if we can get you through. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for giving me a chance to speak. I went through many of the reasons we're objecting to the plan on the email I sent out, because I didn't think I was going to be able to speak at that point. So firstly, we feel we've been denied any input through local consultation. We've had one leaflet in April 2021 from the developers, which was distributed just to a limited area around the site. And they claim there was a notice put up at the site informing us, but no one, as far as I know, no one saw that. So we had no evidence of that. And my husband walks the dog there every day, and he never saw it. So apart from that, there's been nothing, no meeting to ask for our opinions. The council we've had nothing from the council at all. At the moment, we've got proposed new council houses at the old library site in Aveley. Now, for that, we've had a whole afternoon session, lots of publicity. We could go and make suggestions and see what is planned. So just say surely a development with as much significance as the school should warrant as much consultation, especially where it's on Greenbelt land that borders our village and is used extensively by local people. We've got horses stabled there and dog walkers, all sorts. Anyway, so the officer's report, which I've read, it talks about the Greenbelt and says that substantial weight should be given to the fact that the school would be inappropriate development, would harm the openness and conflict with Greenbelt purposes, and would also mean that we have lost Grade 1 agricultural land. And this is particularly significant at this time of increased awareness of the importance of food security and the need to produce food here in this country. And then they go on to argue for very special circumstances why this application should be allowed. And central to this is the stated need for school places, and that's where we disagree with them, certainly in the area served by the site. And note that the applicant explicitly says there are no current plans for substantial new housing development, and the application must be judged solely solely on the existing need. So if we look at the figures from Thurrock's pupil place plan, in 2025, Averley will be short of 27 primary school places across the whole primary school, just short of 2 places in reception. Kennington's need is greater, being short of 59 places across the school and 12 at reception level. And Purfleet, meanwhile, is undersubscribed by 99, 30 at reception level. So these figures, and they take no regard of children who may go out of the borough for school, and that's fairly common where we are because we're right at the western edge of Thurrock. But anyway, we'll take them as the maximum figures. So at primary age, it's best obviously if children can walk to school and make local friends. Now, if you know I'm assuming you know the geography of Averley. In Averley Village, we need 27 places for a school. We don't need 420 places, we need 27 places. And it could be comfortably met by bulge classes, and that's been done with the Year 6 just leaving. They had 2.5 form throughout the school. And if children choose to go out of the borough, we might not even need the bulge places. Kennington's is separated from Averley Village by the bypass, and there's a larger shortfall there, but the distance from the centre of Kennington's to the bottom of Love Lane, which is the site chosen, is 1.4 miles, which is a 30-minute walk. So clearly it's not the best site for the children from Kennington's, and they too would be better served by expanding the existing school rather than a lengthy walk or more likely a drive if parents have a car. So these two scenarios of possible bulge classes, it may cost the council a certain amount of money, but if it succeeds in protecting our valuable green belt, we'd say this is money well spent. And so therefore we would argue against the case for being very special circumstances for building on the green belt. Okay, well I wanted to look at the plan itself, which it doesn't meet the legal requirements for environmental standards, which are meant to be outstanding if you're building on green belt, but these are only very good. And they're claiming a 20% reduction in carbon emissions, but why don't we have zero carbon or even carbon negative? And where we can teach children the damage that fossil fuels are doing, we can teach them what we need to do to combat climate change, especially because Thurrock Council have declared a climate emergency. So we could have solar panels, heat pumps, maybe a wind turbine, maybe a green roof. All these things could be done. And we need to call their bluff and say, if you want this school, then do it properly, because the children of Averley deserve the absolute best. They don't deserve a cheap modular building and that's taking away their green belt. And that's about it, really.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation there. Okay, and with that, we're now going to invite down a statement of objection, and that's Councillor Maureen Pearce. Maureen, if you'd like to come down and sit at the front, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. As a ward councillor for Averley and Uplands, I wanted to add my objection to this proposal. I'm disappointed that the applicant never responded to my concerns or objections to the original consultation last year before proceeding with this application. The recommendation for approval is concerning. It highlights the quality and appearance of a scheme that is rushed and disappointing. It admits that Grade 1 agricultural land will be lost. It accepts that the site is likely to lend itself to archaeological finds similar to the mammoth discoveries of the new A13, and it recognises the proposal does definitional harm to the green belt in Averley, but suggests that the approval to be granted because of the applicant's time constraints, budget and school places pressure. For me, that is not a valid reason. The area of Hall Estate in Averley, where I live, has become a traffic and parking problem hotspots for recent years, largely due to congestion to Ship Lane because of the gridlock caused by incidents around the retail park, the QE2 bridge, the A13 or the M25. That feeds into residents struggling to access Hall Road, Hall Avenue, Love Lane and other roads. Despite the good intentions of any travel plan suggested by the new school, school-time drop-offs and pick-ups will plague the Hall estate and exacerbate the already dire traffic situation. This is not an appropriate site for the development. I also find the case for the new school vague and confusing. The report talks about additional primary needs within the Aveley, Ockenden and Purfleet planning areas, and then discusses only the projected need of Aveley Primary, which doesn't appear to be that strong, and that of Kennington's Primary to the far north of the ward. There's no indication excuse me, of what the existing schools think of the requirements of the new school. While Kennington's Primary is quite contained, it still has a site to grow. Aveley Primary even more so. As for talking about pressures in Purfleet, it would appear to me that they need to be addressed in Purfleet as part of their town plan, not Aveley's. I really don't think it's acceptable to send children outside of their area, to make numbers fit, then shrug when parents have trouble getting there. Local children should have local school places, and I'm sure my colleagues from West Thurrock Ward would agree. Unfortunately, this proposal feels like a Trojan horse for the delivery of thousands of more homes to the south of Hall Road. This submission has been rushed, and as this proposal has detrimental impact on local amenity, I strongly object. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Okay. All right then, and that takes us on to our last speaker statement, which is a statement of support, and that's from Lee Francis. Lee, would you like to come down? Oh, and when you're ready, you have 3 minutes in which to present your case. Thank you.
Dear members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today in support of the application for the proposed Harrier Primary Academy. We appreciate your decision at the previous meeting to accept the officer's recommendation of approval. However, we fully acknowledge the reasons for the application being brought back to committee today in order to discuss 4 items which were raised as concerns by Aveley and Kennington Forum. We would like to respond to these items each in turn. Firstly, with regards to consultation, prior to the submission of the application, we undertook a thorough consultation exercise, including more than 400 leaflets being issued to residents, letters being sent to ward councillors, and a consultation website being produced and made publicly available to all interested parties. There is no statutory requirement to undertake pre-application consultation, but the Trust felt it was vitally important to make sure that the local people were given the opportunity to review and comment on proposals. We also had direct liaison from the Forum on a number of occasions through our planning consultant, and we've been open to new comments and queries from all parties throughout the application period. We're also confident in the Council's consultation exercise and agree with their summary set out within the report. Secondly, with regards to air pollution, we are very conscious of potential harmful effects on children and the wider population, and have been assured by our contractor Eco Modular's working practices and commitment to producing a construction environmental management plan. We're glad to hear that the Environmental Health Officer has no concerns relating to air pollution. Thirdly, with regards to employment offers for local people, Eco Modular prioritised the appointments of local supply chain partners and recruitment of local resource. They ensure that any elements of work materials which could be procured within the locality of the school are presented to local businesses, and they also engage with local education providers regarding apprenticeships and T-level opportunities. Finally, with regard to putting local children first, the school is being delivered to meet an identified need for school places in the local area. It is therefore at the forefront of our priorities to meet that need and deliver school places for local children first. The Trust aim is to ensure its academies have simple and consistent admission arrangements that focus on serving the local community. In closing, thank you again for your time, and on behalf of the Trust, we are very grateful to have been given the opportunity to work closely with Thurrock officers, the Department for Education and the wider design team, working over many months to design and improve proposals for Harrier Academy. If approval is granted this evening, we are confident we will deliver valuable school places and exceptional opportunities for learning for local children for generations to come. The facilities are also a great social benefit for the people of Aveley, offering parts of the site for community use. We appreciate the recommendation of approval and would hope members are able to accept that recommendation today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right then, so based on those three speaker statements, are there any further questions to Lucy? Has anything come up there that you'd like to raise with the planning officer in charge of this case? And that's Councillor Watson Piccolo and Councillor Polly. Do you have any questions? Councillor Polly?
Sorry, Lucy. The points raised and the reason it's come back, level of public consultation, air pollution, jobs for local people, local children first. As Chair has quite correctly identified, I was at the April meeting and there was, I thought, if my memory served me correctly, quite a detailed discussion over the children's places and who the school would serve, and as regards the air pollution, I'm struggling to see. I appreciate this particular speaker hasn't been to committee before, but those points I feel were addressed in the very first meeting, but perhaps I'm wrong. I don't quite understand what's significantly different.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Polly. So the kind of difficulty was kind of going through quite a substantial objection, trying to work out if there was anything which hadn't already been covered. So the best way I thought was to go through the previous reports. So some of the items would have been kind of verbally discussed, but to make doubly sure that we've covered them and put these items in front of members. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Very much so. Thank you, Lucy.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Piccolo?
Thank you, Chair. Just a minor point, but the planning application notices are actually, I believe, and perhaps someone can confirm it, are actually put up by the council, aren't they? So the council would have they may be sort of like A4 sheets of yellow put on a lamppost somewhere, which possibly aren't as noticeable as they could be, but they would have been put up in this case.
Yeah, of course, Councillor Piccolo, and we always take photographs as well, so there is total evidence that the council fulfilled their duty with the site notices.
Thank you.
Okay, any Councillor Watson question?
Thank you, Chair. Is there anybody here from Children's Services that we can can ask questions to?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, when this application has come through, a lot of this has been predicated on local children. I think it was you that said the local children comes first, with local places into this school.
We offer places based on...
No, the thing was, it was like, they will be there for local children, would have to go into the local schools. However, in 3.6, it says here, the trust, which is a free school, it has its own admission policies.
It does.
So how can you guarantee then that local children in Averley and Kennington will be the first to go into that school?
Their admissions policy is decided by the Academy Trust, and generally it will be based on, they will have looked after children, SEN children, and then it would likely be catchment children or those that are of distance, so that will be closest to the school.
And that is guaranteed, their admission policy, is it?
I can't guarantee that at the moment because they will be drafting that policy. So we can't guarantee what that policy will say because they're their own admission authority. It's not set by the council, it's set by their own governing body. But in general, it will be, their policy will start with looked after children, SEN children, and then they decide the criteria after that, admissions criteria after that.
So it's not guaranteed then that the school will be for local children?
it's more likely that local children will go to that school. But what I can't tell you is what that admissions policy says at this stage, because they will be drafting it and we won't have seen that policy as yet.
So, sorry, Chair, can I ask one more question? So, in the last meeting, we were talking about this school for Kennington. You've just heard that Kennington is 1.5 miles away from where this school will be. So it is going to be outside the Averley village. So how would this be beneficial to Kennington instead of just extending Kennington School by the bulge of 27 or whatever it was?
So when we look at bulge classes, in terms of pupil places, and when we do our plans, we look at all of the number of berths, and we will look at, there is Averley, Ockenden and Purfleet is one whole planning area. Those planning areas have been set for a very long time. And what we do is look at the number of live berths in that area and allocate where we think we are going to need pupil places. And that's based on live berths. What we can't, we account for a little bit of in-year movement, but we look at the schools in the surrounding area. And if we looked at Purfleet, I know you mentioned Purfleet previously, that's quite a distance for families that live in the Averley, Ockenden area to walk to. So the two closest schools are the ones that we've looked at to that development. So looked at where there's not enough places. Although the school is a 2-form entry, it will open as a 1-form entry initially. So it will open a class of 30. So that will be for 30 reception children. And each year those children need to move up and they will take additional children from reception. So they'll work their way through the school till the school is full. So we're not going to open the school and then fill all of the classes from day one. That's not how we work. What that also means is that school could potentially, if we require bulge classes in different year groups, they could open those classes because they will already have the space. So we wouldn't then be looking to open bulge classes elsewhere within that particular planning area. So that's how that works. So it will be a class of 30 initially.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of any concerns of pupil places, so if children from, if they were to be from outside Averley, would they be generally from Thurrock, if it was to be the case? Because the reason I asked that is I remember a few years ago we had a massive problem in Chafford where there weren't enough school places for children in Chafford, and then they were branched out. But then there was also branched out to other areas. So do you foresee an issue there potentially, or is that generally what the DFT do? If they will, in urgent situations, they may draft in kids from other areas, or would it predominantly be from children from Thurrock?
It will
if that's the case, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. It will be for children from Thurrock. New schools and some schools are more popular, so it's difficult because it's parents' choice. So, perhaps, quite some years ago, families would automatically go to their local school. Now it's based on parental preference. So parents choose where they want to go. Once those places are filled, and all of those applications are ranked in order of the admissions criteria, once that's set by the governing body, once all the places have gone, then we would have to offer to the next nearest with available spaces.
Okay then, thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay, all right then. So that we can now head into debate. Would anyone like to start the debate this evening in relation to this? Councillor Watson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't moved my viewpoint to the last time, and I'm still objecting to this. I still think that the school is in the wrong place for where it should be. It's on a green belt. Also, at the full council, we had a petition come through from the Ward Council about parking down Love Lane, and now what we're going to be doing is we're going to put a whole lot of HGVs going backwards and forwards down Love Lane, as well as everyday people dropping off their children or not. With all the biswell in the world, it is going to become another Chafford, Mayflower. The roads are not structured for that, nor is Hall Lane, and there's going to be a bottleneck. So, as far as I'm concerned, going forward on all of this, I totally think it's in the wrong place. Don't agree with it being on the green belt. Don't agree with the road structure, and it could be somewhere else. And the other thing that frustrates me is when I'm being told this is the only option in the whole of the borough, which we were told last time, where it can go. So I think we should be re-looking it again. I think there is an appetite. There can be some bulge classes, because schools with bulge classes will lose out on funding because they won't have them. And I think moving forward, I'm objecting to this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Any further comments? Councillor Piccolo?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I appreciate what's being said regarding the objections to it, but it's a very rare occasion in so much we're looking at this instance in actually supplying school places before we need them. Usually we're playing catch up. We haven't got enough school places, and that's why children have to go out of their local area. I'm pleased to hear that at present the plan is not to fill every year from day one, but actually for part of the school to remain closed, and then when the first entry go in, they move up to the second one and so far, which allows local. So for those reasons, and again for the reasons I stated earlier, at the previous meetings, I think it's refreshing that someone actually wants to put a school in before it's desperately needed. I'd far rather be in a situation where we've got school places for local children rather than having to bust them out of the area. So that's one of the reasons that I will carry on supporting the application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Polly?
Thank you, Chair. I just feel it's gone a little bit deja vu for me because being a lifelong resident of Thurrock, I actually attended school in Love Lane at what was the Thurrock Technical College annex there. So that then got given over to housing, and now the housing that took over the education facility is now next door to another proposed education facility. So sometimes that's just a little bit of an irony for me that and some of the people that are objecting to the new school were actually living on the site of a previous education facility. So it's not the first time there's been one there in Love Lane. I also feel that that we have been chastised as an authority for a long time over it's all about the housing, and we're not making room for the soft infrastructure, which includes such things as educational facilities. And I tend to agree with Councillor Piccolo on this, that it's a little bit forward thinking of us this time to be forward looking rather than reactive to a situation. I mean, I'm actually a resident in Purfleet, and we've got our first ever secondary school. Our kids have been shipped out of area for eternity, and that's took a long time coming. So I having been at all three meetings, I still haven't heard anything this evening that has changed my view from previous meetings, and will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those comments. So yeah, like most applications, it's certainly not easy when on one side you're trying to provide education for children, on the other side you have residents' concerns, and you have to somehow come up with a solution. I'll generally repeat what I said at the last meeting. I think first and foremost, when this application first came to us in April, it was quite messy. We sent the DFT away, and they come back in June with some vast improvements. They weren't perfect. I think the comments on Bream were raised there. So generally, you always aim for excellent, and we're looking at a very good standards. I think the costs were coming in at around about 300,000 plus to achieve excellent. And I think whilst that is important, at the end of the, this is DFT funding, it's taxpayers funding, and ultimately it's for children's education. And if we're going to spend 300k to make it excellent, one, it would have become unviable, and two, that's just more money out of the pocket of the DFT, money that they then wouldn't have to spend elsewhere. In relation to the location, we've approved a lot of schools in the last couple of years, and we always have this issue because ultimately wherever you put a school, you're going to have school-run mums and dads. They're a bit of a nightmare. but by their nature they do have to be near residential areas. There's no good in being in the middle of the nowhere. We tried this with Alsett Heath. We was going to move it a quarter of a mile down the road, but then we realised by doing that you then isolate the school. So what we do is we have drop-off and pick-up points here in Thurrock. No other area, I believe, have those, and it's not even a requirement, but I know it's something our committee pushes for, so parents can go in and out. That's not going to negate the traffic issues, but it should assist. And in relation to the area, in time it will be, let's be realistic, the vast majority of those students will be from the Aveley area, because you're going to want to send your kids to the local school. I mean, my children, I live next to Quarry Hill. I'd like them actually to go Woodside, but I'm not going to send them Woodside because I'm right next to Quarry Hill. It's just more convenient. That's my own personal choice. That doesn't mean to say that's every parent's, but realistically, you want convenience as well when it comes to your kids in schooling. You are right, Councillor Piccolo. We're always criticised for not having the infrastructure in. We always get told, build the hospitals, build the schools, then the homes come. So it's unique we're in a situation where we're a little bit ahead of the game. And in relation to any concerns about students coming from the outside area, we had this issue in Chafford 10, 15 years ago. It was a major issue, and what happened was the children were carted out into other areas, and in some cases they were even outside the borough. But ultimately, that was when we fell behind here in Thurrock, and it is important to look at the reality situation. This is getting kids into schools, which is the most important thing. So, we've had our backs covered in the past in Thurrock for that. And I think that's why it's important to get the infrastructure in first. So I get what everyone's saying. I think some really good arguments from the local councillors. I understand it was most of the councillors in Aveley were against this. I think that the forum have put forward some good arguments. It's a difficult balancing act, but I think ultimately when you look at alternative sites, you are going to have similar issues in terms of location and parking on the basis of, one, you're never going to be able to negate the issues with school-run mums and dads, and two, they have to be in local areas. So I don't have too much to add to that other than an element of regret because, not everyone's going to be happy about it. But my opinion's not changed from the last meeting. So unless anyone else has anything to add, we'll move to the votes. No further comments? Okay, so there is a recommendation set out on page 25. That's recommendation 5.0. I'll recommend that. Is that seconded? Seconded by Councillor Polly. Dem Service will just head to the vote. Now there's 4 members able to vote, so all those in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, that's 3. And all those against? Okay, that's 1. So that's 3 in favour, 1 against. Okay, so with that we can say that agenda item 8, Harrier Primary School in Aveley has been approved. Okay, thank you everyone for your attendance here this evening on that particular item. We'll just allow a few minutes for people to leave if they wish. If not, we'll move on to the next item. Yes. Okay. Let's move on. Okay then, thank you. Okay, so that then moves us on to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item 9. This is land adjacent to 13 to 29 Kipling Avenue. Now, whilst this was on the agenda last time round, very quickly we moved straight to a site visit. So all those in attendance here this evening will be able to participate in this particular item. With that, we did attend the site visit. I think pretty much everyone was there. And then from there we went on to Langdon. So with that site visit and any questions that have arisen, John, would you be so kind as to present your report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a quick point of housekeeping, there's one update to the report. The RAMS figure for contributions quoted on page 6.15 is incorrect. The cost for that is now £137.71 per unit, making a total of £1,101.68. Thank you. So, Jenny, if we could move to the first slide, please. So that's the application site in front of you, the red line area. Next slide, please. So that's a Google Street Map or Google Map showing the aerial photo of the site. Next slide, please. Again, further red line site plan. So this is a photograph looking east. The site is to your left on that screen. That's looking from the southwest corner, looking diagonally northeast across the site. That's looking directly through the middle of the site. That's looking to the western side of the site, looking onto an existing terrace of houses. That's looking towards the far northwestern corner of the site, and the plan on the screen at the moment is the... Oh, sorry, can you go back one? Sorry, thank you. So the plan on the screen at the moment is the proposed site layout. So the application seeks planning permission for the erection of 2 pairs of terrace dwellings. The dwellings would be 2-storey, running north to south through the site, backing towards one another at the western and eastern side of the site. The dwellings would be of a traditional design and constructed from brick with render finishes and timber cladding. As you can see on the plans, each dwelling would have its own private garden, and 14 of the parking spaces are provided to the southern boundary of the site, with 2 parking spaces to the northeast. Each private garden would have an outbuilding, a bin store and separate access. Just go to the next slide, thank you. And this is the elevations of the dwellings. So you can see their traditional 2-storey design, regular window patterns, materials that are similar to the existing properties in the area. So the application is located within a residential area and is located predominantly in an area characterised by residential development. The site at present, while it is open and grassed, has no formal designation on the core strategy as open space. The site is within the residential area of Tilbury. Therefore, whilst it is noted neighbour comments have said that their children and other members of families have enjoyed using the land for recreational purposes, land is privately owned. There is no protection offered to it by the policies in the core strategy. Officers therefore consider that the proposal is acceptable in principle. As we can see from the design and form of the dwellings on the screen at the moment, they are 2-storey properties with a mixture of external finishes. These are fairly similar to the existing properties in the street scene and are considered to be acceptable in design terms given the local context. The landscape and ecology officer has been consulted, and given the land is open grass, there is no protected species and there's negligible impact on ecological value. So in terms of landscape proposals, the proposal would be acceptable subject to conditions. The Council's Highways Officer has also raised no objections to the parking arrangements proposed. Whilst the parking to the southern part of the site, if you could just flick back one, thank you. Back one more, sorry. Sorry, back. Sorry. Okay, there we go, thank you, yeah. So whilst the majority of the parking is on the southern boundary of the site, and whilst this would reduce on-street parking because vehicles would need to come and go, there's no right to park on the pavements or to park on the highway itself, so it would be difficult to object to the loss of on-street parking that's currently enjoyed by residents. In terms of the proximity to other properties, the dwellings on the western side would be 13 metres from the front of the dwellings to the west, and the eastern dwellings would be 12.3 metres from the fronts of the properties to the east, which is very similar to other properties in the area, and therefore there's no objection on those grounds. It is appreciated that the development represented change to the outlook to existing properties. However, the relationship between the proposed dwellings and the existing dwellings is common in terms of the urban environment. Given the separation distance, it is not considered that proposed dwellings would be unduly dominating to the existing residents. Accordingly, subject to conditions and payment towards the Essex RAMs, approval is recommended.
Okay, thank you, John. So, obviously on the site visit, I think one of the things that struck us was odd. Could you show us the original plan? Sort of, it was a bird's eye view. Keep going back. A bit more. Yeah, no, go forward one. Go forward one more. Right, that's the one. Back one, please. Back one, please. There you go. So one thing that I think that struck us was slightly strange was obviously... So can you tell us, first of all, when was the general estate built? And what we was trying to work out was why that green space wasn't built on when it was originally built on. And we sort of come up with the idea, well, maybe it was supposed to have been a little green space for the residents there. So did we find anything? Because I just find it hard to believe that the developer back in the day would have gone, oh, well, you can have that bit of green space for free. So did we find anything? Thank you.
Yeah, permission was given in 1983, 1984 for the redevelopment of 307 houses, so basically the newer part of that section of Tilbury. At that time it was shown as an open area on the approved plans. There was no agreement that it must be kept as open space. One of the conditions at the time was that it potentially could be given over to the council to manage and look after. But as the Speaker's statements identify, the land's remained in private ownership since that time. So there's no control that the council has in terms of making that stay as open space. So the context where we are today, sitting in this room, is the core strategy doesn't define it as open space, an area that we would usually seek to protect.
Okay, thank you. And just help me out there. So you mentioned, what was that part about the council might have taken it on, or there was an understanding, but it just never come to fruition?
Yeah, there was a condition on the original decision that if the land potentially could be given over to the council, but it wasn't. It's been retained in private ownership since that time.
So just to help me out, so there was a condition that said it could be handed over to the council, but it was sort of just never.
No, it didn't. It didn't take place. No, it was owned. It continues to be in private ownership.
All right then. And one other one. Could you go to the car parking on street sort of scene? I think one more. That's that one there. Or actually, go back one. Right, that one there. So you see where that car is parked, the one sort of in the middle on the left. That's not on the road, is it? That is a purposely dropped curb for car parking, isn't it? I assume. Is he on the curb there? Sorry.
In front of the blue car or the black car?
Don't worry about this one down here on the left. Oh. The one in front of that.
The one by the lamppost.
Yeah, go on then, we'll go with that. Is he on the curb? Yeah, all right.
They're all on. Yeah, they're all on the pavement on the
left. That's not a cutting, is it? That's an actual curved pavement, yeah.
That's a pavement.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. Thank you. Sorry, I thought it might have been a cutting like this one down here on the left. All right, never mind. Questions. Okay, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask one condition again, just to follow up on the Chair's point about that green in the middle, that it was not given over to us, so it could have been, that was a condition. But was it originally planning permission on when the estate was doing, was that a condition that should remain open spaces as part of a Section 106 or something like that agreement on it?
No, we've looked and there isn't a 106 that requires it to stay as open space. There isn't one that we've found that says that. No.
Can I just ask one? Sorry, can I just ask one other question? Then why, for the last 30 odd years, we've been cutting the grass?
I don't know. I'm not sure. That's why it's not something we would know those details. It might be that the team were sort of maintaining the other space, which is a couple of minutes walk to the south, and have been maintaining as well. I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, promise last one. Thanks, Chair. So in terms of the roads, those roads are quite small roads, and looking on those the plans, there looks like there's traffic congestion already. So how are you, if that development happens, that's going to put even more traffic in that particular area. So how are you going to mitigate that, considering that's already got quite a bit of traffic? And that picture was probably taken in the afternoon, probably on a Wednesday or a Thursday, or because that's what normally happens. So I just wanted to know, what's that actually look like at a weekend or in an evening? And what have you done to mitigate the traffic that's going to go around there, including the HGVs that's going to go through, to build it, if you agreed it?
So yeah, the HGVs will be a relatively short-term matter. We have included a construction management plan. There would be a construction management plan which would include details of HGV access and things like that. So we would sort of look at restricting the construction hours so that HGVs only attended site at a reasonable time. So that would be just a short-term issue. In terms of the long-term, there's no, as I said earlier in the presentation, there's no right people have to park on the highway, and people shouldn't really be parking on the pavement. So I know it's something that residents have been doing and have got used to, I guess, because they can do at this point. But there's nothing that guarantees them those spaces. So in some senses, if we had vehicles accessing there, it would perhaps remove some of that it would remove that parking on the road, so part of that road potentially could be a bit clearer.
Thank you, but with all due respect, if they all parked on the highways, you wouldn't even get a car down there. So I'm glad they're parking on the pavement to some extent.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Piccolo.
Yeah, just, I don't know if this is an urban myth, so possibly someone could let me know or not. This received planning permission 37 years ago. I understand that, because I know Fords that they can do it, they actually close the entrance off to their estate once a year for a day to maintain the fact that it's private land. To my knowledge, this piece of land in the 37 years has never been restricted for use of the public. And I would say that therefore that rule would apply in this case. In other words, the public have had free access to it for 37 years. The council have been cutting the grass for 37 years. I think the developer has lost his chance and it's now public land and it can't be developed. Sorry, I know that was sort of a question and a statement at the same time. Perhaps someone could... sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, John, just picking up on that, I mean, where are we sort of legally? I mean, so Councillor Piccolo raises a good point, but then wouldn't the developer just turn around and say, well, I'll see you in court then? Or, I mean, where are we with that? Thank you.
I don't know if Caroline from the legal team wanted to make any comments on that at all.
Well, normally with a use, isn't it? It's normally the opposite way round. Somebody wants to say something's been used for, the owner wants to say something's been used for so many years, and it will have acquired an existing use. Whether you can apply it the opposite way round, I'm not actually sure. The council's saying, oh, it's been used as open space for X number of years. I don't know if what is it? In other words, what is its existing use? It's a bit of a funny one, actually. I think it's something we ought to look into if it's a question that does need to be answered.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we're in a little bit of a grey area with this particular one. But look, we'll see what the agent's got to say. We'll see what the residents got to say, and we'll go through a few more questions. Councillor Piccolo, did you have an additional question?
No, it's only that my original question was to do with the fact that, to my understanding, that unless the public have been refused access to the land for at least one day a year, after a certain period of time, the land becomes public open space. So I'd just like to clarify what I'd like you to look into. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. That does exist for roads. I'm not a legal expert, but what you're quoting is for roads. So if people close a road or access for once a year, then it remains private. So whether that is associated with that, I'm not sure. But in terms of private roads, if you close it once a year, it remains private. If you leave it open for 366 or 365 days continuously all the time, then a public right will exist over that. It may be worth actually talking to the public rights of way people, because there are also, I know recently in Fobbing, the landowner actually published a notice indicating that people had no public right on his land, and that may you may need to look into that sort of area if you're going to look in terms of public rights, in terms of people's walking rights and whatever is potentially.
Councillor Watson and then Councillor Polly.
Thank you. Can I just ask a quick question? We all know that Tilbury is a floodplain in its own right, but what is the flood like for that particular area? Is it a concern at all? Because it just says here there's no comments received from the flood risk manager.
Yeah, we had consultation response from the Environment Agency. They don't have any objections to the proposal. There was a flood risk assessment carried out, and part of that flood risk assessment set out some mitigation measures, including things like the levels of the first floor to provide refuge to the potential residents, and the Environment Agency were happy with what was detailed in that flood risk assessment, so there's no objection on flood grounds to that.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Polly.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for development of 8 two-storey dwellings with private garden, and usually we have a breakdown of whether they're 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom properties. I'm familiar with this area. There are some houses around there that are like maisonettes. They're 2 storeys, but they're 2 separate buildings. There's no. I'm not picking up detail. Whether I've missed it, I apologise. In this report, I have a nervousness because they're not saying 8 houses, are they? They're saying 8 two-storey dwellings. Is there a potential that we could end up with 16 families there?
No, it might not be too clear on the plans and elevations, but they are 2-bedroom traditional two-storey houses. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sitting here listening to comments, and I find it very difficult to actually get past the accountability side of this. Back in the day, why didn't the developer make more of an issue of this, and actually point out that this land is available, and why subsequently someone in the council didn't pick it up? I'm really struggling with that. But I thought of another question. It might be a very, very hard one to clear up. Have any local councillors or residents, etc., but more importantly local councillors over that period since 1983 ever come forward requesting that drop curb is replaced with highway, obviously to create additional proper parking, and were those requests turned down?
Anything there, John or Julian? Have you got any sort of, you're not sure whether you've ever been asked for drop curbs or additional spaces?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've only been here 6 years, so it's not arisen in as far as I'm aware, in my 6 years. Previous to that, maybe. I'm not sure. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the scheme, just like everybody else has. I think we all did do the site visit, and I think on that day it was pretty busy, and that was during the day. I would seriously struggle to think where local residents would actually park if that became, obviously allocated parking for the housing. I think obviously there is an issue with parking now, and it's only going to make it much worse. I'm quite flummoxed by that one.
Okay, thank you. All right then, Councillor Tandy.
Yeah, I'm just following up with Councillor Arnold. We went there, I think it's 1 o'clock on Wednesday. The space was open, kids were playing out. The house is adjacent to the park, so the parents will keep an eye on the kids as well. And again, parking, I just don't know where everyone would park. So for 37 years it's been open, I don't see no difference. Thank you.
Steve Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. Just to maybe throw a bit of light, being quite an antiquated character from around here, and I used to work in that area. Going back to the sort of late 70s, early 80s, and what was going on financially with local authorities, there was a tendency for them to see green spaces in developments as a liability, and therefore there was a reluctance to take them on. And that's why you've got quite a lot of developments where the road is still a private road because the council never wanted the liability or the responsibility for it. And at that time, that was the thinking. Well, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It was just, I recall that quite clearly with various sort of small developments around Thurrock. Hope that helps anyway.
Okay then. All right then. So if there's no further questions for the time being, we'll go on to the speaker's statement. Let's have a look who we've got first. We have 3 statements. The first one is a statement of objection from Lauren Chilvers. Sorry. If you'd like to come forward, please. And when you're ready, you have 3 minutes in which to present your case. Thank you.
I would like to say thank you for allowing me to speak in objection against a planning application on the open space in Kipling Avenue, and to also say thank you to the committee members for making the visit to this site, as it gave them the opportunity to see how the development is going to affect our community within Kipling Avenue's green space. Also to thank Councillor John Allen for emailing all of our comments individually to the committee members, as we feel the application did not truly reflect the residents' comments and concerns. This recreational area may not be marked on the core strategy proposals map as open space, but it was dedicated as open space as stated in the plans of 1985, and was this one of the conditions for approving the application in 1985 to have the open space, because why would it be left as an open space and not be built on back then? This green space is the heart of our community within Kipling Avenue and the surrounding area. Children and families use this area as it allows them to play safely, as overseen by the surrounding houses, which is also beneficial for a resident who has a child with special needs who is able to roam freely and safely, especially as it is away from antisocial behaviour and also people riding dangerously on motorbikes, which is currently a huge problem in the town. One resident commented how he had chosen the property he is living in purposely to live on this green space and to get away from the concrete jungle of where he previously lived. The Highways Agency made comments concerns, the same as all of the residents, over the parking, as the parking is limited, as it is for the current residents, which will be at a loss if this planning goes ahead. Also, the location of the waste bins on the collection day, but this is not reflected on the application. The application stated that 3 bins from 8 houses equals 24 bins will be put out on the path on collection day. However, if the planning goes ahead, there will be no said path available, which is due to vehicle access taking this space. Also, as the council leader, Councillor Rob Gledhill stated this week about getting out in the borough's wonderful green spaces to enjoy the sunshine. How can we do this if our green spaces are being taken away? If this planning goes ahead, then we will lose all of this, which will affect us all mentally and physically, as the children will have nowhere safe to play freely, and we will all be overlooked, losing privacy, sunlight, and will be overshaded. It will feel very enclosed and cramped, affecting mental health. This area is already busy during the school run when parents park to drop off and collect their children from the nearby school, where they safely use the paths to cut through to the school. Sadly, when the site inspection took place, it did not show a true reflection of how busy it gets during the school run, with cars parking on the pavement and families cutting through. You only saw how it is once residents have used their vehicles to go to work. Children then use this area to have a play with their friends, and parents socialise on their way home. It is also used during the day for younger children and evenings, weekends and school holidays for all of the residents, where we can get fresh air and exercise, which is important for everyone's health. If we no longer have this, then the residents will have nowhere to go and can no longer have their get-togethers. We have built a lovely community, and this will all be spoiled and taken away from us. Losing this green space would be devastating and would also cause so much stress and upset for all of the residents. So we are pleading you to please consider this when making your decision.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll now invite a statement of objection from a Councillor Steve Lydiard, who's a ward member, and Steve, a former member of the committee. If you'd like to come down, and you have 3 minutes in which to present your case. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good evening, Planning Committee. The Poets Estate was originally built in the early 1900s and was pulled down in the 70s. The old estates consisted of spacious houses and large gardens. It was replaced by a high-density development of approximately 300 houses and flats with small or no gardens. The developers thought that some green space would be appropriate, given the density of the new development, hence this green space under consideration tonight. And by the way, Steve Taylor's comment earlier on about not adopting green spaces in the 80s was quite true. I've got several examples of where Thurrock Council did not legally adopt green spaces at that time. Carry on. There's strong opposition to this development from all residents, as is recorded on a petition going round. Residents have said that they need this green space as it adds a bit of openness to the estate. Closure of this green space would be overwhelming and subtract from the original design. The parking situation would prove more difficult, as would the loss of sunshine to some properties at certain times of the day. The green space is used daily by families and young persons, sports. Locals use it as a social space to meet. This reduces social isolation for young and old. I was there on Monday, and there were 3 paddling pools, a couple of bikes, kids running round. The green is used as a pathway for children going to school, avoiding car exhaust and road safety issues. I know the council is pressured to build more homes, but for the sake of 8 homes, this development will devastate an estate. I believe that it isn't private land, it belongs to the council. The council's been cutting it for 30 years, as has been said before. I ask the committee to reject this planning application, unless you could look at these residents in the eye and say, don't worry about the hundreds of heavy lorries jamming up these streets. You've got to drive through 5 urban roads to get to this place. It really is difficult. No community infrastructure levy. The piling. There's going to be piling 15 metres from their front doors in places. Probably 3 months of it. And that consists, if you don't know, of reinforced concrete piles being driven down 100 or 200 feet to support the buildings. Can you imagine the noise? You'll have to tell them there's nowhere safe for your kids to play with their friends. What do you say to the new residents? Oh, sorry, we've got no GPs in Tilbury, no school places, 6 weeks to get a doctor's appointment, and actually all the nurseries have just been closed. I'll leave it up to you, committee members. Thank you for listening to me, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that then brings us on to the last speaker statement, which is a statement of support. That's from Gary Taylor, who's the agent. Gary, joining us online. Thank you.
Hopefully you can hear me, Chair.
Yes, thank you. If you could just speak up, that'd be great.
Okay, no worries. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Apologies I'm not present tonight. Unfortunately, COVID is doing the rounds in my house for a second time, so best I stay away. Hopefully you can hear me adequately. My name is Gary Taylor. I'm the agent for the application. I'm speaking in support of the proposals and response to the 2 statements of objection submitted to committee. If you will allow me, I will digress very slightly just to respond to a few comments that have been raised this evening. One of them with regards to the original development, just to highlight that there were other open areas on the original development, one in Thackeray Road nearby and one in Crowther, which have both been developed in Crowther with 1-bedroom flats so far, and I believe in Thackeray there's a diverse 3-storey structure of flats. Just a little bit background on the site. My client, the applicant, has been in ownership of the site for a considerable time, there or thereabouts around the time of the original development. He's not recently purchased it at all to develop. He had no intention of going forward. He's sat on the land for a period of time, which is pretty obvious. He has been approached, as you see from my statement, by various developers trying to buy the land off of him and redevelop it. The consideration by the applicant to develop it himself is based upon not overdeveloping the site and providing something which suits the area and the run of development. And I believe you can see that from the proposals. One of the questions that was arisen was what size are the dwellings? I can categorically say they are standard 2-bedroom dwellings, very similar to the surrounding site. So hopefully that's enough of a little bit of background on the applicant. In response to comments regarding the loss of open space, I just want to put in perspective the size of the land, which is 0.14 hectares. The nearby park 1 minute walk away in Fielding Avenue is 2.5 hectares. Obviously a park used by considerable number of local residents with its facilities. I think most of you know it's got a large children's play area, purpose-built sports court, football pitches and goals. In addition, it's been suggested the original development left this land purposely for open space, but I'm not convinced that's the case. I think Jonathan Keane raised the point with regard to the condition relative to the potential purchase back by the council. We've had various conversations about that, so I won't dwell on that point any further. As you can see, it's clearly identified as confirmed by Jonathan Keane that within Thurrock's core strategy, it's not open space. It is privately owned. I don't think there's any legal recourse whatsoever from the local authority. Somebody mentioned it normally happens the other way round. Basically, you have to prove that you've used the site rather than the council have used the site. So in that instance, there's normally a lot of evidence and proof that's come about. And as you mentioned, Chair, I believe it would end up some strange legal process that I would imagine the council would never get involved in. There is a fence around the site. It is enclosed. It is what it is. It is private land. Just to pick up on one other item, it was mentioned about traffic into the site. Jonathan Keane mentioned again about construction traffic. There will be restrictions on a condition should it be approved. And I also believe the increase of traffic for 8 houses in the state of over, I think it's 327 on the original application. Plus there's more now in the 2 developments that I mentioned. And I think that's arguably negligible on the roads, to be fair. Did I make any other notes? Sorry, please bear with me.
That's okay if you could sum up for us briefly, thank you.
Yes, yeah, I'm pretty much there. I was just trying to answer any questions that did arise. So yeah, for those reasons, we respectfully ask. We understand the issues of the local residents, but we're trying to work on the basis of policy and fact, and hopefully I've made it clear enough for the committee to consider reasonably. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay then, so that's the speaker statements done. Are there any further questions based on what we've heard from any of the speakers? Councillor Polly, and then Councillor Shinnick.
If I heard the last speaker correctly, he was saying there was a fence round it. It's a knee rail, isn't it? And again, that is something that the council have put in to stop parking on that piece of land. That's what I'm surmising. That is not a demarcation. Am I correct?
If you could just flick back to there is a metal knee rail fence around there. I don't know who put it up, but it looks similar to local authority fences.
Okay, thank you. And then Councillor Shinnick.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think we need to go back on the drawing board in this and find out, the council have been maintaining the land for the last 37 years. We need to look into, the situation, who the land actually does belong to now, where we've been maintaining it all this time.
Sorry, just to clarify, the land, I carried out a land registry search in the last couple of weeks, and it is in private ownership still, so it is actually owned by the developer. There's obviously the other issues members have raised about the use of it, but it is owned by the developer.
There's another question to be asked. If we've been maintaining this all these years, surely the landowner should be paying us because we've been maintaining it.
Yeah, I mean, that is, we'll go into debate and we'll try and work out where we end up. But you do raise an interesting point. If it's a difficult one, we'll come into debate and we'll try and explain what we feel, the legalities of what we're facing, and then we'll come up with something. But interesting point, Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, it's just comment again, really. I can see we're all really struggling with this one. I think we all know, well, I think I know where I am on this. But it's just coming back to this point of the, the maintenance of the land, really thinking about it. I mean, I could go around and actually cut my next door neighbour's front garden for 20 years. It's completely my choice. And I'm sure he wouldn't stop me. So I think this kind of issue with maintaining the land isn't really one that can hold up. Although I am trying to think of something that would work against this.
Okay, sorry, so we're just on question, we're just going to jump into debate. Are you doing questions or?
No.
Sorry. I'll go into debate, yeah. There's no further questions, no? Okay, right, so we'll go into debate then. So, did you want to start, Councillor Polly? Then I'll come in after, and then we'll, Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I did attend site visit, although I was running a bit late because of traffic problems from the rest of the borough. And I was met on site by Jonathan. So the residents wasn't expecting me, although they had an idea when the other group were going to be there. One thing that struck me as I drove past was how well maintained it is. I mean, sometimes Tilbury unfortunately does get bad press. There was no evidence of litter. The knee rail is there. It is. We often see, and I certainly in my ward often have residents asking about curbsiding, if green spaces can be given up in favour of vehicles. As Councillor Arnold asks the question, residents haven't asked for this to be given up for car parking. They obviously value the space and use the space. It wasn't contrived for our visit that day. And as the ward councillor said himself, he's visited it there this week, and it's still in use and cherished. I understand what our legal advisor was saying about grandfather rights or grandmother rights. If something's been in use for over 10 years without objection or enforcement, then we would normally support that is the use of that either premises or piece of land. So I certainly haven't got the legal or technical knowledge to know if that is substantial enough to say that this is designated open space. And we come back to local plan again. It's one of those things that if we were stronger in our local plan and had that designated as a green and open space, we might have a stronger argument here tonight. I just don't like the scheme, and that's my view on it. I think sometimes when we look at the report and there's reasons not to object to it, sometimes I just feel that we're not town planners. That's not what we are as councillors. We are here as checks and balances. Sometimes we have to have valid reasons to support our arguments, but as we just debate, my feeling on it is I wasn't really in favour of the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'll go next, and then I'll bring yourself in, Councillor Watson. So, it's a very difficult one. This, I think, being realistic. So, when the land was there was a condition in the 1980s, it was open for the council to take that land on. Obviously, in reality, that has not happened. I understand, as you said, there was a bit of a negative. The council had a bit of a negative approach on base and liability, and we are where we are today. It's that decision not to adopt that land has really put this land under jeopardy. So, look, I think being realistic, none of us like it, do we? But so then we have to make a decision as to whether we can come up with a material reason for refusal, or whether we accept that, whether we like it or not, this is private land, and ultimately, housing is. Housing is given up as a priority on these types of spaces. So it's a difficult one. I don't like this the parking situation. Clearly, if it did go ahead, that's going to cause more issues. But again, unfortunately, under planning, our experts in the highways team have come up with a different opinion that will not be an issue. So it is a difficult one. The owner, you sort of, do you have sympathy or not? I'm not so sure. If you purchase the land, they were quite happy for us to cut it and not maintain it themselves. Having said that, it has been open for the residents, and I could foresee a situation where it gets really messy, where they stick their own fence around it if they don't get their own way. But then obviously that would be an entirely different battle, and that's just something that we may have to deal with if and when that happens. So it's very messy, and we're in a difficult spot with this parcel of land. So if we are going to refuse it, I do think that there is an argument to be had that whilst it's not public open space, it has been used as open space by the residents. So that will give us, I think, an avenue to refuse it. And I think you could also argue about the idea that the fence that was put around there was by the council, and it's been maintained by the council for such a long time that you could argue that ultimately, is there a case that actually you shouldn't be building on that, even though the registry office says it is private land. So I do think that's weak. I'm not sure if that will stand up on appeal. But I do also think that realistic, that is the only option that we have in front of us. So it'll be interesting to see if you come up with anything else. I would actually understand if you approved it, because I think, and I'm tempted to approve it, because I just don't think we're fighting a losing battle here. But the principle is actually, should we stick up for it? So let's see what you guys think, and we'll come up with a conclusion and see where we end up. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to fight it, even if we are doing a losing battle, because of just for the moral reasons behind it, to be honest with you. So for me, I unfortunately couldn't go on your site visit, so I'd done my own site visit at 6:15 one night, and that was packed down both sides of that road. And that's the reason I said, when was that photo taken? Because I feel going forward, when anything to do with a development like this, that the inspection should be taken out when everybody's there, and not in the middle of the day where you don't see a true reflection of what exactly that parking is seriously like. The other thing as well that I'm really worried about is that if we had a look at the hours of construction, they're going from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening. That's straight in the middle of school, and people coming home and going out. That will be even worse. You're completely correct in terms of the green. The green is very well managed, to the point that when I was there, the residence was out. There was 2 mums, I think, that actually was picking up the litter on that green, as well as a bouncy castle and a swimming pool was going at the time. So it is very, very, very well used and very looked after. And I totally get what you're saying about the reasons about its private land and why it wasn't adopted. We will never, ever know that. But I don't think that stops us and the fact of our morally and rightly that if you take that piece of green away, that will be devastating to that part of the estate, because it is for all the young ones, and the mums were out watching their young children play on there, and everybody respects that. So for me, and also the piling is going to go from 9 to 6 every day on weekdays while they're putting piling through. That's going to devastate the school that's near it and the noise itself going on there, without the sight of those HGVs going through small roads. So I'm sorry, but I'm against this. It feels very, very wrong. It feels that if we will fight it, then I think we should. I really do not understand at the time, why the developer, after all of these years, are now coming back now. Why didn't he do it ages ago? Why didn't he come to us and say, why are you cutting my grass? But, you know, that's where I feel. So I'm really sorry, Chair, but I'm not going to support this application. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Piccolo. And yeah, as I said, when I said we might be facing a losing battle, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, it could be that, you know, we do refuse it on those grounds, rightfully, because it is openly accessible space by the public. You know, that could, you know, the building inspector could easily agree with that. So, you know, who's to say that we couldn't secure that on appeal as well? So, yeah. It was just I always get nervous over the legality of land ownership, and I don't want it to get messy. But ultimately, if you're going to lose it, you might as well let it get messy anyway, or fight for it. Councillor Piccolo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I've been looking at the map on page 39, and the space is central to the existing estate. And to my mind, even a child would realise that that was put there as open space and green space for that estate. That's also confirmed by the fact that we've learned that originally the developer wanted to give the land over to the council. So the intention was always that that was going to be green space for that estate. And regardless of what's gone on, I think that makes it very clear that that should be maintained as green space for the local residents. I mentioned about the, you know, that if they haven't done anything or fenced it off or whatever for so many years, that it becomes public land. Councillor Poley mentioned, and it jogged my memory, that if it's a house that's been squatted in, if it's 10 years, then the ownership of the house goes to the squatters. So if you follow that through, if it happens to roads that are closed, if they've not been closed one day a year, then that now becomes a public road. If a house has been squatted in for 10 years and no one's done anything about it, that house then becomes owned by the squatters. It makes sense to me then that if they haven't maintained it for 35 years or however many years it is, and we've been doing that, they've not restricted any movements on it, they've not put anything forward, they wanted to give it up in the first place. To my mind, that is public land, should stay public land, and there's no way I can see how we can let them develop it.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, Councillor Arnold?
Yeah, I think Councillor Piccolo puts a very strong case across there. It's very well spoken, very well put. I mean, I'm, as I said before, I'm seriously struggling with trying to come up with a reason why this should be granted. I don't actually feel that the actual scheme itself, I haven't commented on it, but the scheme layout itself isn't that wondrous. Actually, I think that could have been looked at and given far more serious concern if the applicant was minded to be a little bit more generous to the residents of the area. The point with the construction noise and the disruption, I mean, again, I do completely understand, but construction is construction and anything can be built anywhere at any time, and it's just, unfortunately, we do have to put up with that inconvenience should it happen to us next to us, and we could go on and find hundreds of examples of that, but it is obviously very unpleasant if you live there. I can't think of a reason, I can't think of a reason why I'm in favour of this, to be honest, and I think I'm minded to actually, at this point, I'm minded to actually refuse it as well. I think it is worth a fight. It's a lovely piece of land, you know, we did the site visit, it's very well cared for, it's very well looked after, clearly has good use by the local residents, and I think we should do a bit to try and protect that. 8 houses in a big scheme of things isn't a lot. I know we do need the 8 houses, I'm not getting away from that fact, but I'm wondering if this is actually the right site to do it. It would be a crying shame if this piece of land was lost to the developer.
Okay, thank you. Was there any further comments, Councillor Piccolo, and then we'll probably head to some form of conclusion.
Yeah, I just had a thought. In the statement it says the landowner has been approached by developers. And I suddenly wondered whether or not the landowner, in actual fact, wouldn't have dreamt of developing the site if he hadn't been approached by developers. He's probably thinking, well, if anybody's going to make some money out of it, then I will. And I'm not decrying the owner for that, but I think this is, my mind, it's just purely come about because developers have approached him and thought we can build on that. Otherwise, I've just got this feeling that he would have carried on being Greenbelt, being looked after at no expense to him, well used, and everything else. So that's my final comment.
Okay then. Okay, I think everyone's generally contributed there, so we'll come to some form of conclusion. So first of all, let's look at the recommendation. So on page 38, hang on, no. Let's get the approval here. No, sorry. Yep, sorry, 41. It is 38, I was right. Yeah. Page 38, recommendation 3.0 is to approve. Would anyone like to recommend approval? Okay, so there is no one recommending approval there. Lee, let's bring you in there for a second. You're looking for an alternative, yeah?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, moving to the Constitution, Constitution makes clear that we need to now to have an alternative recommendation that needs to be made, put forward, made in public, and to clearly set out the reasons for departing from officer recommendation. That needs to be seconded. Chair, I've listened to the debates and speakers, and so we sort of distilled this down into two elements. So on one hand, the NPPF says presumption in favour of sustainable development. You should be looking to approve, councils nationwide should be looking to approve schemes that provide new housing if it's not in Greenbelt location, and if it meets with policies, you should do that, and you should do that quickly. On the other hand, the NPPF also does talk about open spaces and recreation. So if I just quickly read from that, Chair. So the relevant section is paragraph 98, which says, access to a network of high-quality open spaces and opportunities for sport and physical activity is important for the health and well-being of communities and can deliver wider benefits for nature and supports efforts to address climate change. It goes on to say, existing open space, sports, recreation buildings and land, including playing fields, should not be built on unless it sets out three circumstances. An assessment has been undertaken which clearly shows the open space, buildings or land to be surplus to requirements, or the loss result, these aren't relevant to this case, but the loss resulting from the development would be replaced by equivalent or better provision, which is not the case here, or the development would be for alternative sports and recreation provision. Again, not relevant in this case. But the first one then is, what is the site needed, well used by the community, or is it surplus to requirement? Applicants put forward a case to say, actually, there's a park 1 minute's walk, there's another park just around the corner as well, play equipment on that. So their argument is it's surplus to requirement. Officers looked at this, including the drive for new homes, and we see that through inspectors' decisions as well, as obviously being given more weight in this case, and that's led to recommendations on the table. The question for members really is, actually, members as a decision-making authority here, do you believe that that is clearly is surplus to requirements or not? And if you're being of the view that it's not surplus to requirement, you find that it is actually necessary, it's an important community asset, albeit it isn't formally designated, it is still of benefit to the community and needed by the community, then that, I suggest, could be a reason that you might want to pursue.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Lee. Obviously quite detailed, so we'll narrow that down. So clearly there is quite a lot of opposition to this particular application on the basis of it being a much-needed community asset. So it's clear that we're not comfortable with this development going ahead. As Lee's mentioned there, we do need to come up with a material reason for refusal. I suggest that we do keep it nice, clear and crisp, i.e. I think our only area of attack, and good area of attack, is open space. And I wouldn't muddy it up with any other concerns such as parking or construction, because whilst valid, then they're not material. and we've got to understand that an appeal inspector is going to look at this, and if we get things like that wrong materially, then he's going to think that we've got the open space wrong as well. So let's keep it nice, clear and concise. I'll bring yourself in, Councillor Piccolo, if you don't mind. Did you want to start this evening just as to why you feel that this should go ahead? And I think there was 2 areas of focus there. One, it being well-used open space, and obviously the element of sort of ownership. The fact that we've maintained it, the fact that it's our fencing, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think we've had massive amount of evidence to show that the green space is utilised extensively by the local residents. Looking back over the years, whilst the council may have maintained the fencing and might have cut the grass, the local residents have made sure that the park or open space has been occupied and used to the benefit of the local area, and I think it's wrong that be taken away from the local people. They talk about being able to walk to a park that's only a couple of minutes away. The benefit that open space has is that there's probably overlooked, I don't know, by 20 odd houses, possibly a bit more than that if you look down the road, which means that it's an ideal place for children that are just coming up to that age where parents want to let them have a bit of independence, but are worried about them walking 2 miles or to a park. It's sort of like a training ground for them getting some responsibility, and I think that plays a massive part. The other reason I say, and I think this needs to be looked into, although I wouldn't like to delay the application because of it, is the fact that I brought up about if you've squatted in a house for 10 years and not been thrown out, you become the owner of the house. The same as if, unless you restrict access onto a piece of land for at least 1 day a year, then you can't restrict access anymore. So I think that seriously needs to be looked into, because I think that is another strong argument for refusing this. 37 years, it's never been built on. It's always been used by the local residents. They obviously appreciate it. They look after it. I could understand if it was a tip and a mess. But, I think we need to support the residents in this instance. So I've rambled a little bit, but I think you get the 2 gists of what I was...
Yeah, that's pretty much where I was. And then the sort of the original 1980s, it was left there for that reason, or it's pretty obvious. So if we could just maybe just attach that onto it. I think that's pretty elegant. You've put it elegantly there. I don't think there's too much more we can add to it, and I don't think I'd want to add too much more. Okay, right, so we'll leave it there for the moment. Lee, would you like to come in back? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this trying to distill this down into reasons for refusal, and obviously if the application did go that way, Tom, we would have to make sure that the wording was agreed for you as Chair. But what I'm hearing there is around overlooking there's natural surveillance of the site. It's a safe space for children and families to use. It's been used for 37 years. It was always intended to be used for that. It acts as a sort of visual break within the estate as well. So it was always intended to be used for that, and it's that sort of local importance. So I think there's probably enough there, and I obviously need to look to Caroline in legal just for her view on this, but I think there's probably enough there to craft a reason for refusal.
Yeah, I agree there is, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And okay, so with that, you're happy for us to move on? Yeah,
move on.
Okay, is that seconded? Councillor Watson is seconding Councillor Piccolo's recommendation, which is to refuse. And I'm happy we can move to the vote. Okay, so all those in favour of Councillor Piccolo's recommendation for refusal, please raise your hands. Okay, and that's 7 votes in favour of refusal. So we can say that agenda item 9, land adjacent 13 to 29 Kipling Avenue, has been refused. Okay, Thank you everyone for your participation. Everyone who was here for that, if you'd like a couple of minutes to leave, please feel free to, and we'll move on to the item 10. Okay then. Okay, let's move on. Thank you everyone. Okay, so that then takes us on to agenda item 10, 22/0021/FUL. That's Highfields, Lower Dunton Road. Obviously, this was deferred for a site visit, which I understand we all attended. Ian, would you be so kind as to present the report?
Like Kelly said, the application relates to land to the west of Lower Dunton Road. Most of you have been there. String of 8 dwellings, mostly single storey, albeit some have got rooms in the roof. They appear as single storey dwellings. And again, Jenny, that's the existing site. Adjacent property of Cambria to the south and Lugana to the north. Further to comments earlier in the committee, letter of support has been received from Cambria. Letter of objection has been received from Lugana to the north. Thank you. That's the existing mostly single-storey dwelling. The plan to the bottom right of the screen shows a small area of first floor with a dormer that you can see on the rear elevation. It's the floor space of the dwelling measures, or the footprint of the dwelling measures 137 square metres and the floor space is 171. Proposed is a replacement dwelling. I went through the dimensions previously, but in summary, the footprint increases to 214 square metres and the floor space increases to 417 square metres. The volume goes from 448 to 967 cubic metres. There's a large two-storey projection at the rear with a crown roof and high eaves, and there's a two-storey front gable with, again, high eaves, which is unlike anything that's within the other 8 properties that this sits within. The ground floor plan shows the open plan lounge, sitting, dining, kitchen area and a cinema room, study, etc. And the first floor plan with 4 bedrooms, bathrooms, etc. That's the roof plan, which particularly shows the increase in the size of the dwelling and the bulk, particularly the rear element where you can see the crown roof is the flat area, which is substantially bulkier than any other part of the existing dwelling. And again, Jenny. We can skip through the photos fairly quickly because most of you have been aware that Councillor Watson's seen these before. That's the existing dwelling. That's the dwelling from the rear. And that's the neighbouring property, Laguna, to the north, and Cambria to the south. There was a question about the height of Cambria. I've looked through historic plans, and it appears that although not necessarily definitive, the best evidence that we've got is that the neighbouring dwelling measures 5.9 metres tall, and this proposal would increase to 6.2, so they're fairly similar in terms of height. And obviously, as you've seen before, the dwellings do vary in some respects in terms of height. Difficult to read on that screen, I'm afraid, and I might have gone a bit over the top, so I apologise, but I thought, given some of the comments that were made previously, it was worth emphasising the importance of the greenbelt in this case. The development plan, which we're required to determine applications in accordance with unless material considerations dictate otherwise, includes policy PMD6, which says that replacement dwellings will only be permitted where the replacement dwelling is not materially larger than the original dwelling. That's consistent with the MPPF, which is a material consideration, and says that a local planning authority should regard the construction of new buildings in the greenbelt as inappropriate in the greenbelt. it's an exception to that is the replacement of an existing building, but only where it's not materially larger than the one it replaces. The table that I've shown on there demonstrates substantial increases in floor space, footprint and volume, all over 56% increase in footprint and over 100% increases in floor space and volume. So it's indisputable, arguably, that this dwelling is materially larger than the existing dwelling. The original dwelling, I clarified before, was probably smaller, but we've given the applicant the benefit of the doubt and we're using the existing dwelling, which is a generous position to take. But even using the existing dwelling, it's, like I say, in my opinion, indisputable that the proposed dwelling is materially larger than the dwelling it replaced. Development is therefore inappropriate development in the green belt, and the NPPF requires that to be afforded substantial weight. And it shouldn't be approved unless very special circumstances exist. By being significantly larger, the dwelling would also reduce the openness a bit in terms of height, depth. And some of the previous comments, the relationship with other properties in the street were considered, but the relevant consideration is the original dwelling on this site and how the proposal relates to that, rather than anything else that exists within the surrounding area. Thank you, Jenny. As very special circumstances, the applicant has put forward a case which we've divided into 4 areas. These are summarised in the report, but I've also gone through, I can go through them individually. The main one is that 90% of the property is substandard. Officers have afforded this no weight. There's no structural survey being provided. And even if we did take the view that it was substandard, that wouldn't justify a dwelling of this size being built. Maybe it could justify a replacement dwelling and would be grounds to replace it, but it doesn't justify an increase in size, which is inappropriate. And also the updating of buildings in the Greenbelt is by no means a special circumstance, as many dwellings throughout Thurrock seem to be replaced. Second element was that poor living accommodation, which again officers afford no weight. It's not considered that this justified, for the same reason that a dwelling of substantially smaller size could still provide improved living accommodation. It doesn't need to be this big to achieve that outcome. The same is also largely true for the applicant's third point, which is that it provides improved family accommodation, where the occupiers have family members close by. Officers afforded this no weight. Again, it doesn't represent a public benefit and doesn't justify a dwelling of this size. The fourth point related to the applicant's point that the dwelling has been designed to be respectful of the plot and to minimise harm to the Greenbelt. Again, we've afforded this no weight. For reasons that we've set out previously, we don't agree that that's been achieved. But in any case, high quality design and being acceptable in all other respects is a fundamental requirement of planning, and so it doesn't represent a very special circumstance. For all these reasons, other considerations haven't been put forward that outweigh that don't clearly outweigh the substantial weight that should be afforded to the harm to the Greenbelt. Thank you, Jenny. So overall, there's a Greenbelt reason for refusal, which is summarised in the first 3 bullet points there, which I won't repeat again. And there's also a second reason for refusal advanced by officers, which relates to the design of the dwelling. The points are made earlier about the gable end to the front, the crown 2-storey rear projection to the rear, and the overall scale and appearance of the dwelling relative to the street, which is a separate matter to the Greenbelt consideration, which is primarily relating to the size of the dwelling and how it's replacing. And that's set out for 2 reasons. We've recommended the refusal of the application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian, for that. Okay, right, so most of us went on to the site visit. Any questions based on the site visit, based on Ian's report there? Councillor Polly?
Thank you, Councillor Shinnick. Yeah, I forgot to put the microphone on. If we can go back to some of the photos. So the footprint that we're looking about discussing at the moment is just that existing house, is it, that is there? Because could we go back one? Or forward one then, sorry. That one, thank you. So at the rear here, we've got a large. Is that a swimming pool there? Yeah. And then we've got outbuildings. Yeah. One's said to be a stable, is it? Yeah. And the other outbuilding by the sides of the van. So the footprint of those are not included in the footprint that we're discussing. We're just discussing the footprint of the actual house, sorry.
Through you, Chair, all of those buildings are shown to be retained, so they'd effectively be neutral. But in any case, they have the garage, the detached garage has certainly been added since 1948. The stables can't be quite so sure about, but as they're staying, they'd count neutrally, wouldn't count in favour or against. So our figures are based solely on the dwelling that you can see in that top right photo and the attached garage.
Thank you. It's just, I'm just not quite sure what would happen if they wanted to develop, say, those stables into a pool house or something like that. Can that be done?
Through you, Chair, depending on permitted development rights and how they go about according with them, they could erect outbuildings up to a certain size, provided that they're used for purposes that are incidental to the dwelling, and they're within the curtilage of the dwelling, up to certain height limitations, depending on their position on the site. There's a number of factors that would need to be. If they went any larger, they'd need planning permission, and that would go through a fairly similar exercise, because again it would represent erecting buildings in the Greenbelt.
Okay, any further questions based on the site visit? No. Okay, so this is a deferred item. Obviously we do have speaker stands, but we've already had those. So now we'll enter debate. Obviously, I think everyone was there for the site visit. Obviously, it's quite a unique location, Lower Dunton Road. I know, obviously, when we was driving up there, it's obviously we are actually surrounded by quite large homes to your left and to your right. I know we've approved 2 large developments there recently, one being Landon Hills and obviously the Red Row Hospice site. I suppose, obviously, one thing that was unique about this property, driving up to it, whilst it's a huge site, it was quite enclosed. And I was struck by how, when you go in there, you can't really see the horizon much. It was quite unique, really, that actually the site does look quite enclosed. I do agree with Ian's conclusion that it should be refused, because obviously when you look at development in the green belt, yeah, ultimately excessively, you as officers you are restricted, but I suppose as councillors we have a bit more flexibility. What's other people's thoughts on this? I'll be interested to see what other people think, and then we'll take it from there. I'll go to, I think, Councillor Shinnick, then Steve Taylor, then Councillor Arnold.
I know that it's going over the height of what's recommended for the green belt, but I mean, for me, when I see the property, it's all a bit of a mishmash, and I think it's only going to enhance the area and improving it, you know, by building this new property. So for me, I've got no problem at all with it going through, honestly.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring Steve Taylor in there.
Thanks, Chair. As most people know, roughly where I stand generally with anything to do with the green belt, which is don't touch it. But I have to say that when I look at what's been approved, and I know there is no such thing as precedent, but when I look at what this committee, not necessarily the people on it now, have allowed over the last 2 or 3 years, I find it ironic, if nothing else, because as you rightly say, you've got the hospice site, but you've also got the stuff at Dowsgate Lane, which is just sort of being done now, and then you've got the stuff just the other side of Dowsgate Lane, and then you've got the Red Row site. And I honestly, I mean, all of those, as you know, I vehemently objected to. So I'm finding it difficult, given what's been approved before, and I trust me, you know what I'm like with the Greenbelt, but to be honest, I think it's kind of double standards almost, and I find that I'm not necessarily in favour of it, but when I look at what we've allowed more recently within half a mile of it, and a damn great golf course behind it, and the clubhouse, and now there's the houses going there as well, and you think, seems a bit harsh. That would be my view of it, which is the opposite of what I would normally feel, but that's just my view at the moment. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Obviously, a lot of developments in the area. Obviously, I have to accept responsibility for most of them because I've been on the committee quite a long time now. So all of those have probably come through the committee when I was on there. But we've got almost a brand new committee this year. So, yeah, who knows? I mean, it depends what other people's opinions are. That takes us to Councillor Arnold and then Councillor Polly.
Thank you, Chair. Where I am on this, obviously I'm completely in agreement with the comment regarding Greenbelt. We need to protect it. But there's kind of a counter-argument as well, I find. We're kind of sitting here today trying to think of the borough as a whole. We want to deliver not necessarily prosperity, but we want to build aspirational homes. I do know this area reasonably well. I think anyone driving through there would kind of look at these properties and absolutely no disrespect to the owners. They all tend to need a little bit of love, a little bit of care. There are references back to the golf course. Played quite a bit of golf myself in a time, and you generally find when you visit lots of golf courses, they're generally surrounded by high quality housing. It's just the way it is. I think the way I'm seeing it at the minute, this development could be the start of something that actually starts to change the nature of that area from fairly higgledy-piggledy, ramshackle. Again, I don't want to use harsh words. I think we could actually press a little button here and actually try to do something for the area, especially linking it up to, I think it's the Red Road development down the road. I mean, I can think of lots of developments around the borough, and I do think there's a couple in Fobbing High Road recently, last couple of years, and I'm pretty sure they're Greenbelt as well. And there's a couple of developments there with huge houses, and I only think they actually enhance the area. And we do need, I know we need a big mix and a good mix of housing, but there is room for high quality, larger homes, and I don't think we, as a borough, we should be standing in the way of this kind of development. We should be a lot more forward thinking, a lot more open to improvements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Piccolo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If you drive down the road, as you go past the house, if you blink, you'd miss that there's a house there, because you can't see it unless you actually look to your left within that 5-yard gap where you go up the drive. So my point is, and from the back, it's not overlooked at all. So saying it will harm the green belt because of its appearance and its size and whatever else it is, technically that might be correct, but practically it isn't. It will improve the conditions on the site. It will bring it up to a better standard than it is at present. If you look at the house next door, it's obviously been modernised, good quality finish, and whilst I'm usually against building on the green belt, I think in this instance it would actually improve the green belt, because it wouldn't look like a rundown house with a caravan parked in the front garden, a 30-foot caravan, which is quite entitled to park there, but he's probably got it parked there because he's using it for not necessarily for storage, but for whatever. So I don't know whether, if we were to approve it, there could be a condition that the caravan in the front, or the permanently sited caravan in the front garden would need to go. But to me, it will only improve the look of the green belt. It wouldn't be out of character because it's similar looking from the front to the other houses down the road. So that's why I'm minded to approve it. I know it goes against it, but I think there are exceptions to the rules, and I believe that this is one of those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Polly.
Thank you, Chair. I do agree with Councillor Shinnick that it, on arrival at the site, it does look like a hodgepodge. The front doesn't match the back doesn't look so. And as Councillor Piccolo said, the static van at the front as well is not. One of the reasons that the applicant has said that they need the footprint as large as it is for extended family. That's a very big back garden, and there are those outbuildings there. Although in the main, I agree with the other comments around the room that this would be an opportunity to tidy that property up, and that I do have a concern about the footprint of it. We have one neighbour objection. It's not a big suburban road. It's not like you're going to have 30 or 40 objections from people because the houses are spread out quite a lot. I just have a nervousness about if we approve this and then family are moved in, do we then get another application for a granny annex in the back garden? Because it could certainly tolerate one the size of that garden. So as well as the static van at the front, I think we do need to protect the green belt in I'm not sure if I'm using the right vocabulary, but like the permitted development rights that have been discussed about perhaps removing those to make sure that if the committee were minded to support this, that we do try and support our policies that obviously the officer has paid good attention to and detailed to the committee quite well for our benefits. That we don't open a floodgate here. That would be my concern. Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I did drive past this because, again, sorry I couldn't be on your site visit. I was away, and I totally agree with everything that's said. But it does say on the plans that static caravan will be removed after build, and so I'm confident that will happen. You're completely right. I'm very much like in for the green belt, but once again, there's reasons behind it. Tonight we've just agreed a school that is going to be sitting in the middle of the green belt, and this is in a garden on the green belt. So I'm hoping that by doing this, it might enhance the area and might make it look a lot better than what it is. And you're completely right, Councillor Piccolo. It is. You will miss it in a blink of an eye. I went up and down that road at least 4 times before I actually saw it. So I'm very minded on this occasion to actually agree this development. So that's where I'm going to stand. So thank you.
Steve Taylor mentioned the other large developments in the area, like Redrow and the likes. One of the fears could be that if this planning permission got knocked back, because of the size of that piece of land, there may be a developer like Redrow that actually approach the resident and say, we'll buy the land off you because we think we can make a very strong case because of other precedents that have been set in the local area to actually develop it and having 10 homes over there. In actual fact, the site's big enough to have more than that. So I think for the reasons I've already stated, that you can hardly see it as it's gone in a flash. It would definitely be an improvement on what's there at the moment as regarding the looks of it. The caravan's going to go, and so I say I'm fully in favour of giving permission on this. especially because of the fact I'm frightened that a major developer might come in and try and use the other big developments as a reason to build in the back of that.
Yeah, okay, interesting comments. I mean, I know in Fobbing that's quite popular, isn't it? The inbuilds at the back. I think with Red Road, obviously that did come with a hospice, and with Langdon Hills, that was obviously a luxury sort of retirement home. So I don't think it would be just houses. But yeah, interesting comments. Is there anything else that you'd like to say? No. Okay then. Right. So we'll have to come to some form of conclusion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you have spoken, generally in favour of this scheme. So that would probably be enough this evening to look to come up with an alternative recommendation. As I said at the beginning, I do agree with Ian's conclusion as a planning officer, because obviously you do have that responsibility in terms of footprints and planning rules. But I suppose as councillors we have a little bit more of a luxury in terms of what we can and cannot approve. We went to the site visit. We've taken a look at it, so I think we've done due diligence there. What does it look like when you're going up the road? What does it look like from the back garden? It's quite well protected. Looking at the neighbouring properties, I think certainly the one on the right was quite large. It wasn't high, but it was quite huge in its footprint. And yeah, obviously, if we approve this, it is a massive increase on that footprint. So I can see why there'll be an element of nervousness about that. But I've always looked at these things a little bit more practically. And practically, I'm looking at a very dilapidated property. And on that basis, I think, and on the comments you've said, it will be interesting to see if we can come up with an alternative recommendation. So with that, there is a recommendation set out on page 58. That's a recommendation 3.0, which is to refuse. Has anyone on the committee like to recommend refusal? No, no one's interested in refusal. Okay then. Right, so Lee, I'll bring you in. You're obviously looking for an alternative recommendation, and if you'd like to just give you a statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the starting point here is obviously Greenbelt site. Is the development inappropriate? Through the case officer's assessment of the case, it's clearly inappropriate. It's way beyond what we would see to be a reasonable extension to property. It totally conflicts with national and local policies on that, and for that reason should be refused all day long in terms of planning policy. Coupled with that, the next question is there any other harm? Case officer identified other harm in terms of the design. The harm by definition and the harm by the concern about the design needs to be given substantial weight, so that tips your Greenbelt balance heavily in favour of refusing the scheme, and then you obviously need your very special circumstances case to tip the scales and to clearly outweigh the harm that's caused by inappropriate development, the definitional harm, and then the substantial harm through the design as well. What have been taking down notes, so we've got improve the condition of the property, improve the standard of living and accommodation. It's not particularly visible. We're relying upon other schemes. Just simply, Chair, none of this at the moment represents very special circumstances. It's not unique. It's not one-off. It would really just open floodgates for anyone else to come forward, and these could be repeated elsewhere, any plot of land all over the borough. So, case officer did make a helpful point around replacement dwellings, and I think members started going around the outbuildings that are there. There is clearly an option for replacement dwelling on the site, potential even to consolidate some of those outbuildings and bring that together for a larger replacement dwelling on the property. But as it stands right now, that the scales are heavily weighing against, so we would be needing to see very special circumstances. We need to understand the weightings that are given to the very special circumstances, and we'd need to hear the evidence that you've got around why you would give that much weight to those factors. So that's what we'd be looking for, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Lee. So obviously there's a desire there to give this development the go-ahead. Right, so first and foremost, as always, as a planning committee, we judge each individual case on its own merits. First and foremost, in relation to the impact on the Greenbelt and the design, obviously I think we've done due diligence. We've gone to site, we've had a look at it. As you drive up and down Low and Dunton Road, it is, there's houses, there's huge houses as you're driving up and down. I think that we've approved, as I've mentioned before, the Langdon Hills Golf Course site for a luxury retirement village in the Greenbelt. We have approved Red Row, which came with the hospice, which was also in the Greenbelt. And in relation to the property itself, what we're looking at is a very old, dilapidated property where the current bedroom sizes would not be adequate for present-day use. So by removing those and adding this particular property, that would improve the well-being of those that live on the site. Second of all, obviously, and this is an important one, the home itself would be environmentally friendly. The current one was obviously built many years ago and is inadequate. So you catch up there. In relation to the footprint of the site, obviously it's quite a large site, and as mentioned, 95% of it would be retained, even though of course the property would be much larger. Okay, is there anything else, Councillor Piccolo, would you like to come in there and add anything else to
No,
special
just
effects?
got a query for one of the planning officers. If the swimming pool had a glass roof on it, or a perspex roof on it, and all the doors around it were perspex and were sliding, would they need planning permission for that? Because I've got the feeling that if it's not a permanent building, or sorry, no, that's the wrong word. I've got a feeling that something like that wouldn't be a problem.
Through you, Chair, if any part of it is within 2 metres of the boundary and it exceeds more than 2.5 metres tall, it would need permission. If it's more than that from the boundary and it measures more than 4 metres tall, it would need planning permission, provided we took the view it's incidental. But that's not what's on the table before us.
I just wanted to clarify, the situation regarding whether something could be built, although it wasn't able to live in it, to the same size as what's being proposed at the moment, but obviously not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else have anything to add before I go back to Lee? No, and then obviously in closing there, Lee, obviously I appreciate there's always this nervousness about precedents, and obviously if we approve this, then we'll have to approve them all over the borough. I do think this particular case is unique in the sense that it is a very dilapidated property. If you look at the, I think there's a few chalets in and around that plot, which are also very large, and yeah, I do accept that those existing chalets could come back to us, but obviously it would be slightly separate for them on the basis of them being more modern. Okay, so if you'd like to come back there and tell us what you think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we would need to understand the weighting that you'd be giving to the various factors in the same way. If you imagine that when you see a planning inspector would give the weighting to the different factors, and there'll be that balancing exercise, as you say. We just need to understand what weighting you're giving to those factors and really why you're giving more or less weight to the various factors. This is essentially the process that you'd need to go through for the Greenbelt cases.
Okay, yeah, so in relation to knocking down the existing property and building a more modern, up-to-date, environmentally friendly home, one with much bigger bedrooms than the substandard bedrooms that we are looking at, I would say that that's moderate weight that can be added to that. In relation to these sorts of developments that we have approved recently, such as Red Row Homes and Langdon Hills Golf Course, and in addition to the homes that are in the area up and down Highfield, I would say that is also moderate. And in relation to the site itself, obviously we've done that site visit. It's the opinion of the committee members that visited the site that day that it is not impactful on the neighbouring properties, and it does not have a harm on the surrounding area and or views, which was just one of the reasons that we went to site, which we'd also consider to be moderate. And of course the design itself is very modern and will be environmentally friendly, which again I think we can add moderate weight there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Is there anything else that the committee wanted to put on the list?
Anything else you think of? Sorry. Steve Taylor, you'd like to come in there?
Well, just a thought, but it was mentioned earlier that there'd been a letter of support from somewhere very close by. So, and as well as an objection, but nevertheless, what it suggests straight away is that you've got somebody presumably very close to it that sees no issue with it. I don't know how close they are, but that kind of makes me think, well, if somebody who's going to live next door to it doesn't have a problem, or next door but one, equally somebody else does, I appreciate that, but just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we can keep waiting to it, but you are right. Yeah, there's, I suppose, the principle of it. Look, again, there's not much objection. This is not sort of a large home that you'd find in the middle of a residential area. It is very well isolated to the extent that Councillor Watson, as you mentioned, it's very easy to miss. And when we went on site, it seemed very enclosed. I didn't see how it impacts the horizon or the landscape. Councillor Polly, did you have something to add?
Sorry, it was just in the vein of a question, really. I'm still struggling, because I think if we sacrifice the stables that are not being used and that other building, we might have been able to have come somewhere nearer to the footprint. But is there any way of conditioning them? As Councillor Piccolo said, it's one thing saying in a planning application that you'll take the static van away, but there's nothing there to say that they won't bring one back once the building has been completed, and also as regarding future development of the site, if the committee tonight are minded to go ahead with it, we are being very generous. So I wouldn't want there to be an area where our generosity is then taken advantage of at a later stage by building on permitted development right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could add a condition there that obviously it's landscaped correctly at the front as to improve the street scene. I mean, ultimately the caravan bike naturally is going to go anyway. And then obviously if they did want to develop any further, then they would have to come back to a future planning committee. But ultimately I'm sure us or another planning committee would look at what we've, the flexibility we've given this evening. And I'm sure that would suffice.
Condition that
yeah.
The PDRs are removed.
Okay. Yeah, I'll. Sorry, Lee. Did you have something to say? And then Caroline, you'd like to come in. And obviously, look, I'm aware of. We've been in this situation before. Obviously, if there are concerns there, it may be a situation where we go to the vote and then we get legal to look over it, and then maybe we'll come back next month, as is the normal case, and we'll take on board what they're saying. So, Lee, did you want to come in first? Caroline, would you like to come in first? Then I'll go over to Lee. And obviously we're very aware that you might have to take this away and give it some scrutiny. Thank you.
Yeah, well, the two reasons for refusal. I mean, one's based on the scale of the development, so you haven't actually dealt with that because you need to say, why you're overcoming that, that objection, and also it's the design. So you need to say something on the design. I mean, you sort of have touched on it, but haven't really tackled with the second reason for refusal, just to sort of focus your minds on, on the specifics.
Okay, thank you. Lee, did you have anything to add there?
Thank you, Chair. No, Caroline's absolutely right on those points, but there was also the point that you raised around it's a large. You said it's a large site. 90%, 5% of the site would still remain open. Again, I was just looking for the weighting that you'd be looking to apply to that factor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that would be moderate in the sense of the size of the land. I think that's an important point because it's obviously such a large area. I actually also think, as Councillor Piccolo says, it starts off any sort of future attempt to try and build backwards, which we have seen in Corringham recently. In relation to the actual scale, this is obviously going to be an environmentally friendly family home based on an old dilapidated building that we're looking at. Now, of course, they could knock it down and come back to us with something on a much smaller scale. But I do think that we've done our due diligence there to look at this particular site in person, and we've come to the conclusion, whilst being there, that what we're looking at practically is going to be a vast improvement, which I think that we can add moderate weight to. Look, I understand that we will always have that bit of flexibility as councillors. Officers are going to be slightly more restricted. Ultimately, I suppose it will come down to a situation now of either you're really uncomfortable and you don't want us to go ahead, or we head to the vote and we come back after you've looked at it legally, and we can take it from there. Lee, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously I'm very nervous about this one, and I think the reasons to put forward instinctively doesn't constitute a strong, very special circumstances case. But as you say, Chair, clearly if members wanted to go to the vote, then we would bring a report back and outline. We'll go through and analyse this in a bit more detail and present it back.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lee. Yeah, I think that would be the next point of call. Let's head to a vote based on a potential approval and what we've come up with. And then, of course, we have an option now to hand it over to legal for them to overlook it and then come back next month. And I think we could look at that report, and if we feel that actually this is probably a bridge too far, then next month I'll have no issues whatsoever going back on that commitment if it seems too dangerous. So and obviously I appreciate we've already read the report, we've had time to look at it. I'm sure we can, if you can think of anything else as well that you'd like to add, maybe we can. So with that, Lee, if you're happy, we'll head to the vote. But that is purely on the basis of a potential approval and legal overlooking that. Yeah, brilliant. Okay. All right then. So I'll recommend that. I'm quite happy to recommend that. Councillor Shinnick. Second it, okay. Right, so we've rejected the officer recommendation of refusal, and we've come up with an alternative recommendation of approval. Obviously, recommended by myself, seconded by Councillor Shinnick. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, and that's unanimous across the committee. So whilst that is a provisional approval, that is by no means a done deal. Legal will now take that away. They'll come back in a month's time, and we will reconvene next month's planning committee meeting. Hopefully, if obviously they've had time to dissect what we've given them this evening. Okay, Lee, you happy with that? Yeah, thank you. Okay, all right, brilliant. So Highfields, Lower Dunton Road has been given provisional approval, pending on a vote next month. All right then. So with that then takes us on to I believe that's. Have we got two more to do this evening? Okay, standing orders. Time is it's 23 minutes past 8. So obviously the meeting's due to close at 8:30. We'll extend standing orders until the close of play. That will allow us to discuss the remaining two items. Is that in agreement with? Brilliant. All right then. So, comfort break, yes, if you'd like to. If you'd we'll just have a quick 2 to 3 minute adjournment, and we'll get straight back onto the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. We'll carry on with the agenda. So we've got two more items on the agenda. This is on, we can find the next one, item 11, 22/00616/FUL, 63 Wolf Road, Stamford-le-Hope, found on pages 79 to 90. Let's head there. And that's John Ken. Be so
Thank you,
kind
Chair.
to present your recall. Thank you.
Just plugging the iPad in, I think. So the application itself relates to land to the rear of 63 Wharf Road and other properties on Wharf Road. Were we able to flick through the pictures yet? So that's the application site on the screen there. So the proposal would result in the demolition of number 63 to form an access, and then two pairs of semi-detached properties. If you could just flick. So that's the site at present. Thank you. Next one, sorry, next one. So, yeah, that's looking northwest along Wharf Road. Next one, sorry. Yeah. So that's looking southeast along Wharf Road. That's looking from the back of the site towards. Sorry, that's looking towards the school playing fields. Next one. That's looking back towards the site from the school playing fields. Again, that's looking back towards the site. And that's looking across the site, and the school is to the right-hand side of the picture. Next one, please. That's again, that's within the site, so that's properties that would be surrounding it. So that's, yeah, so that's the proposed layout of the site. So number 63 would come down, form an access, and two pairs of semi-detached bungalows on either side. Some members may recall this site came to committee in September last year for a very similar application for 4 bungalows, and it was refused following officer recommendation. The revised application has been submitted for some very minor changes, moving the bungalows on the northern side slightly, changing the parking layout and changing the names of some of the rooms in the buildings. So the application site lies in a residential area, and in principle there's no land use objections to the development. However, there are concerns given the layout of the development. It's completely alien to the character of the area. There are no other properties in that form or layout, so that's a reason for refusal or recommendation for refusal. There is also concern if we look at the site plan, the proximity of the bungalows to the gardens of the properties to the south on Wharf Road. There's concerns that it will be overlooking from the dormer windows to the front and rear of each of the properties, so that would affect the privacy of those neighbours to the south. There's also concerns in terms of neighbour amenity, given the access road runs between two of the properties, so there'll be noise and disturbance of vehicles manoeuvring, which would impact on neighbours' amenity. Another significant problem is the highways access. Can we flick back to one of the other site plans from earlier, towards the beginning? Yeah, thank you, that's fine. So towards the sort of southwest of that site, on the opposite side of Wharf Road, is Caborns Crescent, and highways have got concerns about the intensification of the access onto Wharf Road, which would cause conflict with vehicles on Wharf Road and accessing Caborns Crescent. There are also concerns about the layout of the access to the properties, so there's a highways reasons for refusal as well. And there's a fourth reason for refusal because the site lies in the Essex Coast Rams, so where new developments proposed in those areas, we would expect a financial contribution towards the Rams project, and no contribution has been received. So if we could flick to the summary screen at the end, please. So whilst the application is in principle acceptable in the residential area, there are 4 reasons for refusal. The first is the layout of the site, which is completely out of character with the surrounding area. The second relates to neighbour amenity in terms of the size and bulk of the dwellings, potential for overlooking, and noise and disturbance caused by the access road. There's a concern about highways access to the site, lack of suitable access and conflict points on Wharf Road and Caborns Crescent. And the fourth reason for refusal, a lack of financial contribution towards the Essex Rams. So refusal is recommended, and those are the same reasons that members refused the previous application in September last year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Councillor Arnold, question?
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, this site is known to the committee over the last few years. I mean, I've obviously seen applications come and go. Just a general question, really. It's a peculiar piece of land. Actually, I'm talking the sort of dimensions and actual layout. What is this? How long has actually this piece of land been in the ownership of the applicant? Is it actually that it's actually taken all the rear gardens, or it's taken a number of years to take all the rear gardens for the adjoining properties, or is this historically the piece of land that actually went with that bungalow? Because it's a very peculiar kind of layout, really. I mean, really, purely for my education before we get on to other issues.
Yeah, I don't know the exact how long it's been exactly in his ownership, but if we look back in the planning history, applications have been refused for this sort of plot from 1988, 2008, 2008, 2020, 2021. So it's got a long history of similar refusals, and I'm presuming that the site, certainly from 2008 onwards, it's been the same shaped site. I don't know about the 1988 site, but certainly, yeah, it's got a long history of similar refusals.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it just sort of strikes me as being a bit of an odd shape, and I was just wondering if there was a known history of how it came to be, but obviously it's not material importance in this application, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask a couple of questions, just for clarity? So, it is a very weird shape, and I'm looking more for the environmental when they go and pick the waste up, which is behind 3 parking spaces. Is that correct? I'm assuming they have to reverse there. It just doesn't look a big space, and also at the top, I don't understand what do you mean by size 3 turning? Size 3 turning head share service. Can it get an ambulance and a fire engine up there, and then turn it around without taking anything out?
Thank you, Chair. Well, size 3 turning is sufficient for a number of various service vehicles, so like a fire tender or an ambulance to turn round. I suspect with the size of our refuse vehicles, though, that you might be correct and they will reverse down, because if you look at a lot of smaller developments in the Thurrock area, there's one up my road, for instance, and they'll reverse in there, though they could technically go in forwards, but it'd be a significant number of manoeuvres to turn round. So to make it easier, they'll probably reverse in. So that's probably one of our concerns in the respect of the fact that to actually access it, it'll obviously be reversing in rather than doing what it should do, because the turning head, though, should be sufficient for fire attendants and the like.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask one other question then? So, in terms of the houses themselves, do they overlook? I know they're face to face, but have they got any side windows that sort of overlook gardens and the school field area?
They have. You might not be able to see it on the floor plans, but they have windows at ground floor level serving a dining room and an office room. So there's no windows at first floor on the flank elevations, but they have dormer windows, which you should be able to see on the plans. They've got dormer windows on the front and rear elevations, and those are the only windows in each room that they're proposed in. So there would be potential for views out of those windows of neighbouring gardens and towards the school premises in the field. And another kind of link point is, given the proximity of the dwellings on the northern side, the fence, the hedge, which you've seen in some of the pictures on the school boundary, would need to come down. So it would be exposed to the school, and there would be a loss of that hedging. They have proposed to plant some replacement, but that continuous hedge would have to come down.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any further questions? Steve Taylor.
I'm not sure it's so much a question, but I recall I don't know, the last time, possibly the time before as well, that the overlooking of the school playing field, I think from a sort of safety point of view of safeguarding children, that cropped up last time and the time before, at least, I think. So just as another one of the points that kind of kicked it out of bed last time. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, any further questions? No? Okay. Right, so we do have two speaker statements. Councillor Hebb, unfortunately, cannot be here this evening, but hopefully you've had an opportunity to read his statement. And that then leaves us with one remaining statement, and that's a statement of objection from Keith Major. Keith, if you'd like to come up the front here, and you have 3 minutes in which to present your case. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Committee, for allowing me to speak again. I'll first point out, as the plans have barely changed since last time, my statement has barely changed either. So, on behalf of the residents of Wharf Road and the surrounding roads, I'm writing to make objections to the plans to build 4 houses on land to the rear of 63 Wharf Road. For those of us who have homes which back directly onto the proposed houses, we believe that not only will our privacy be compromised by the development, but the proposed houses will not be afforded the privacy required. Several of the existing properties have loft conversions which would directly overlook the rear gardens of the proposed houses. On closer inspection of the plans, it is clear that the side wall of the dwellings will be too close, under 14 metres, to the rear walls of our properties, particularly number 67, which has been misrepresented on the proposed site layout. Assuming that the width of the parking spaces is the standard 2.4 metres, then it can be seen that there is approximately 1 metre of land either side of the proposed houses. As the boundary of the land is less than 12 metres from the rear wall of number 67, then the side wall of the proposed houses must be at least 2 metres from the boundary, pushing the far side wall over the school boundary. In short, the land is too narrow and too close to existing properties to be built on. I'd like to bring to the attention of the committee the objection to the development by Stamford Le Howe Primary School, the school field of which would be directly overlooked by the development, and the boundary trees of which would be compromised by the foundations of any houses built on the site. As the committee will be aware, the landscape advisor to Thurrock Council has confirmed that, quote, "It is not realistic to try to retain the boundary hedge and space for planting is limited. The loss of these sections of hedge would have a detrimental effect, particularly for the adjacent school." We have video and photographic evidence of hedgehogs and grass snakes which frequent the site, and in addition we regularly see bats, common lizards, bees and occasionally badgers on the site and in our gardens. The proposed houses have all been designed with gable ends which are out of character with the current bungalows, all of which have hip ends. Gable ends are cheaper to build than hip ends, and at a height in excess of 6 metres would impose over the rear gardens of the adjacent properties. When this piece of land was first brought to the committee, it was questioned why it would be considered a loss of amenity, and I would like to answer that question. For those of us who live along this busy section of Wharf Road, the fronts of our homes are regularly passed by HGVs going to and from the Stanhope Industrial Estate, and therefore many of us use the rooms at the rear of our properties as our living rooms, places where we spend our family time. If this development is allowed to go ahead, then we will lose the outlook that we have become accustomed to from our living rooms and kitchens, which is of a line of trees and open skies. The fact that the land itself has become messy is because the current owner of the land, the proposer, has neglected the land and allowed it to become that way. Given the opportunity, the local residents would like to take control of the land, clear the mess left and make the land into a benefit for the local community. It is our view that due to the proximity of the planned development to several overlooking properties, it would be an extremely unpleasant place in which to live and should be rejected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that statement. Okay, right. Right, based on the speaker statements and obviously Councillor Hebb's, which you would have had an opportunity to read prior to the meeting, are there any further questions? Councillor Pod?
Sorry to keep asking questions. We've got quite an extensive history of planning applications on this site. And I can't see any history of applicants going to appeal either. Would that be right?
Yes, they doesn't look like. Yeah, sorry, they haven't appealed any of those. Sorry, the 1988 application was taken to appeal, and the appeal was dismissed in 1988. Sorry, so yeah, there was one appeal, but that's the only one.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't think there's any further questions, so we'll head to a debate. Would anyone like to start the debate on this particular item? Councillor Watson, then Councillor Piccolo. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for the confusion there, Councillor Piccolo. So, I must admit, this applicant is very persistent and consistently persistent at that. And I also feel quite frustrated that we've turned it down on a number of occasions because of all for the reasons of we don't like the idea of it. Well, I personally don't like it overlooking the school. I don't like it looking over the gardens. I feel there's an issue there when it comes to the emergency service, having the right turnaround. All for even the waste removals, like having to reverse in off of a main road. And I just feel that the way I'm frustrated is because it feels like he hasn't taken any consideration of what this planning committee has said previously and still persists on putting 4 on. Okay, good luck to him, but on this reason, Chair, I'm very sorry, I'm not going to accept this application for all the same reasons we had before and for all what I just said. I think that the school, for me, plays a major part in this, and to do this sort of work and then the foundations of that could rock the hedges that are already there for the school anyway, and I don't like the idea of it also that he hadn't took into consideration the fact that this overlooks residents' gardens or anything else what I've said. So on that basis, I'm going to reject this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Piccolo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with the comments already raised, made, but my major concern is the access onto Wolf Road. It's got substantially busier now with HGVs going up and down that road. The viewing point isn't particularly good. Highways have actually said that there's a problem with the, I believe, the access onto Wolf Road there. It's an accident waiting to happen, and I think if we were to grant permission, we'd be partly responsible for that accident. So there's the access on the Wolf Road. The amount of traffic up and down Wolf Road has increased substantially since 1988, whenever it was refused back then. And nothing basically has changed from the last time or the time before that we rejected it. And I see no reason why I should change my mind at this time round at this application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, as I say, obviously, I know this. I'm aware this particular applicant has been back to committee several times, and I have sort of looked at this, and I actually went past it yesterday. Know the area pretty well. I mean, and I will say that I'm not actually completely against. I mean, if you want to call this a rear garden development, I don't know if it would fall into that category. I'm not particularly against that. I do feel that this site does not lend itself at all to that purpose. You know, just, I mean, again, you know, there are many of these this kind of developments where they would remove a property to gain access. I do completely understand that. It would be a shame to lose that detached bungalow there. I mean, you know, and of course, I think why the applicant keeps coming back with 4 is just not probably economically viable for him to come in with any less. You know, obviously losing the value of the entrance property. So I think, you know, from the street scene kind of point of view, it would take away from that area and that kind of architecture that's there, which, you know, I know there's issues with heavy traffic, etc., etc. But hopefully all these issues can be removed and changed and alleviated over the years. So it would be a shame to actually remove part of the built environment with this development, when hopefully in a few years' time that the road issues will be improved anyway. I just think that this is really just trying to squeeze too much into too small a site, and it's completely out of keeping with the area. Anyone who knows this area around here or around there is really aware that nothing like this exists at all. They are the wrong kind of buildings or houses or homes to put into that site anyway. I do feel that there's been little regard to the residents of that area, what actually should be put there in the first place. But I think it does come down to the economic viability for the developer himself. I think he's determined to get something on there, and I think this is his only route at the minute. So, I will be refusing it. I think it's completely out of keeping, and I can't back this one at all.
Okay. Any further comments on debate before we come to a conclusion? No. No. Okay then. So I pretty much agree with what's been said there. Obviously, this has been rejected recently. Appreciate it. It's quite unique when you look at the last application, which was an approval in the Greenbelt. What we're doing on this application, it would appear that most are against it. But I think you can look at these things practically, and practically this will have a negative impact on the residents. Practically, there are a lot of concerns there in terms of access and design issues. So, this is one of those situations where I think, 100%. It's one that I agree with, and I'll be recommending refusal. So, if anyone's got anything to add, we'll go to the vote. Councillor Piccolo, did you want to recommend refusal? Okay, and seconded by Councillor Watson. Okay, so the recommendation there is on page 87. That's 8.0. And that's for the reasons, 4 reasons set out. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour of refusal of the recommendation? Okay, and that's unanimous across the committee. Okay, fantastic. All right then, so we can say that 63 Wolf Road, agenda item 11, has been refused as per officer recommendation. All right then, so that then takes us on to the last item on the agenda. And this is agenda item 12, 21/01700/TBC Inspire 24 to 28 Allsit Road. And Ian, if you'd be so kind as to present the report there, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Trying to get it bigger. Sorry. Thank you. This application relates to Inspire on Allsit Road. It's the council-run youth services building, council-owned application, and that's because it's a council application. It's before us. The application the building is there. It's a 3-storey building. It's used as a youth hub or youth's work building. The existing site plan is shown there with 16 car parking spaces existing on the left-hand plan, and on the right-hand plan you can see where 3 parking spaces currently exist. They'd replace that with a single-storey rear extension. There'd be 13 spaces retained. That's the existing floor plan with a staircase at the rear, which is on the left-hand side of that plan as you're looking at it. And then that would be moved further to the left with a single-storey rear extension shown with the hatched wall, be used as a training room and conference facility. Top 2 plans are existing. Bottom 2 plans are proposed. Single-storey rear extension with render, new staircase, emergency staircase to take account for it. There's photos of the building, which I'm sure you're probably all fairly familiar with, so we won't dwell on. That's the building. Top left is probably the best one. That shows where the extension would be positioned. We're recommending approval. It's considered to be acceptable in all respects. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Incredibly positive. Have we got any questions for Ian on this one? No questions. Okay. I mean, other than obviously, look, it's clearly impressive. It's a great scheme. If there's no questions, there's no speaker statements, we'll head into debate. Would anyone like to debate this item? Councillor Polly?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, we had an application earlier where we again spoke about soft infrastructure, and I think this is yet another example where the needs of our young people, who are quite important, you know, to this authority, are being put to the fore, and the fact that we're in a position to consider an application that is providing more support services for our young people is commendable, and I thank the officer for the report as well.
Yeah, really good bit of work from the officers on this one as well. So, okay, if nobody wants to debate, there is a recommendation. That is set out on page 97. Hang on, no, it ain't. No, it's not. Come on, you can find it first. Where is it? 91.
This is where your vice chair prop you up.
Oh, I'm going mad here. I can't see it. Why can't I find the recommendation?
Keep going.
No.
Keep going. That's it.
There it is. Thank you. Sorry, guys. All right then. Right. So, recommendation 1.32. I'll recommend that. Is that seconded, Councillor Shinnick? Okay. So, all those in favour of Inspire 24 to 28 Allsett Roads as per officer recommendation, please raise your hands. Okay. That's unanimous across the committee. All right then. So with that, thank you, Ian, for presenting that one to us. That's Inspire 24 to 28 Allsett Roads has been approved, and that's the end of the meeting. Thank you everyone for your attendance this evening, and look forward to seeing you next month. Cheers. Thank you, Lee.